Welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show. We are getting closer. Can you feel it? Can you smell it? Football in the air. We've already got college football going, but we got pro football coming here. End of the week. We're almost there. The start of a football season. No one knows what's going on, what's going to happen, how this season will play out for your Seattle Seahawks. And I'm getting real excited. I hope you guys are too, because we are right there on the precipice. Today, we are playing off on a show that I've just started off here this year. It's going to be a little new one that I'm going to be rolling out. I call it Seahawks Weekly Roundup. This is just a chance to go back over, sift through any news that might have kind of slipped beneath the cracks, or anything kind of leading up as we're getting into the build-up to the prior game and looking at some of the PFF stats and stuff. We won't be doing that today. It's going to be a little bit truncated weekly roundup today because we don't have as many items to pick over. We're looking at plays from the prior game, who was maybe a hero from the prior game, some kind of funnier moments maybe perhaps indeed in that. But today's going to still be looking at a few different little items that have been going on over the past week here in regards to our Seahawks team. Small little minor moves, some encouraging stuff that certainly is going to make the fans happy in regards to the uniforms. And we're also going to get into a little bit of mine just overall season predictions and outlooks really quickly. I'm not going to go through it real fast, but what I see going on in the NFL this year as far as overall records and how some of these divisions will play out. I did a little bit of that background work for you guys on that, but let's dive in because I've got some things loaded up here that I want to talk about, and you guys know how I do at the opening. I tend to go pretty long-winded here. Thank you guys for watching today. I hope everyone's having a great wind down to their summer and had a great summer at that here. As at least in the Pacific Northwest, you still got a good about month of sunshine left. So you got a little bit of that left to go, so still enjoy a little bit of that, but hopefully you guys are able to have a great summer. No real injury, huge updates, I would say, outside of those guys that we thought were probably going to play around game one, appear to be able to be playing around game one. Your Jerome Bakers, your Draymond Jones types, these guys are going to play. Your Uchenna Nwosu is not going to play. So I think that if you're looking at where things are at injury-wise, the guys that you probably presume are going to make it and be able to go in this game are going to go. And the guys that we wouldn't, which are few, by the way, injury situation is looking pretty good for this time of year. You want everybody pretty much locked and loaded at this time and not, certainly having a bunch of season-ending injuries, let's say. So that part is good to see. Seattle, as I did say, reinforced some of their ranks here just a little bit here over the past week, signing first off the practice squad of the Baltimore Ravens, former second-round pick Tyus Bowser. This is an edge, a guy that fits to the type of edge that McDonald likes, and that he's big, strong, powerful, as I said, former second-round pick, so there is some talent there when you go back to him as a player. He ran a 4.6, 4.65 40-yard dash, 1.59 10-yard split, 37.5-inch vertical leap, 10.7 broad jump, 6.75 cone, and 21 reps on the bench. So if you're looking for on the roster right now, a player that is very close to this as far as their dimensions go, 6'3", 247, 33 1/4 inch arms. None of these are outstanding numbers, but good numbers. Derek Hall is the guy that probably most resembles this guy in the numbers he provides on this. And what this is to do is to provide you a guy who can give you the fourth edge. Because as we look at the numbers game right now with Uchenna out maybe a couple of games here, you have Hall and Moffitt, which is great. They're going to be starters. They're going to be rolling. Good. You brought in Gibson. He's kind of your third guy in there, but you still need the fourth guy. You didn't keep Nelson Cesar. You didn't keep Sharif. And while Draymond Jones is due to play a lot of snaps out there, Mike Morris maybe to play some snaps out there, I think from the coach's perspective, he still would like to have a guy that is a pure outside linebacker type in what this guy does bring from that skill set versus Mike Morris, who's an inside-outside guy, a little bit more of an early rundown defender off the edge, and Draymond Jones probably fairly similar in how you want to use those guys. This guy has not put up a tremendous amount of numbers over his career, being a former second-round pick back in 2017. He has accumulated 19.5 sacks over his career during that span, 4 forced fumbles, 4 interceptions, also showing a little bit of that ability to spot drop off of playing that wide 9 technique. The ability that I can drop in space and not just drop in space and be dead weight, but locate around me what's going on and be able to make a play. And so he's got a little bit of a long history on that side of it in what he's done. I think this just gives McDonald a little more certainty and a little more kind of insurance now, because if you go into the game and you, God forbid, suffer an injury to a Moffitt or Hall, now you're looking at Gibson and then Draymond Jones and Mike Morris playing for a lot of the game, and almost all of that being your edge over the course of a game. And you don't want to run into that territory of it. This allows you to kind of escape that a little bit. And hey, he's got some good numbers here on this, on the 40 times here, 465, 159. These aren't elite numbers, but for a guy who does bring pretty good size on the other side of it, not too shabby. He should help. And the really good news about this is that Mike Macdonald knows how to use this player. There's no, well, I got to learn what he does best, and he's got to learn us, and he's got to learn the playbook, and knows the playbook. You know the player. He walks in the door, day one, ready to shoot. The other guy, the Seahawks sign that I think is of note, I know we got a nose tackle that we brought in for some depth as well. That's more of a practice squad move to me. This is a move where we're kind of anticipating something like this would happen. Sorry, the allergies are bumping up today a little bit. Where we've got PJ Walker having a very poor preseason period, one that left us all wanting. And I think it was the same with the front office as well. We were thinking eventually they're going to get a third quarterback here onto the practice squad and have a little bit of the guy, because you do want that emergency situation, and you don't want it to be one where you're having the guy signed off the street and now learning the playbook, and he's going to be the starter at the same time. That's a recipe for disaster. So you want to have usually the third quarterback on the practice squad. Former BYU quarterback, gunslinger from that long lineage of a lot of quarterbacks that have come through BYU being very productive. Go all the way back to Ty Detmer, man. You can find yourself a nice little BYU tree of quarterbacks that, sorry, I got a cat hair in my nose here. That have been very good with it in college. Now, they haven't necessarily been able to transition and translate that to the pro level. Hall is a guy that was with the Vikings last year, and he put up okay stats in one start for being his first start. It's one of those games where he had like a 5 QBR and 70 rating, and he was like 12 of 20. So nothing major last year in the Vikings in one start. That wasn't a good Vikings team. Any quarterbacks, especially a rookie kind of quarterback's not going to do too well in that kind of environment. He's a little bit of the older brand of your quarterback, rookie, quote unquote, right? BYU and Utah, and sometimes some of those players will be a little bit older. He does fall under that mark. You can see here as I show above you what he did at BYU in 4 seasons there, where he progressively got better, had only really 2 seasons starting, ended out with 31 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 3,000 yards passing. He is a good run read quarterback for the most part, to my memory on scouting him, and I did scout him coming out in the 2023 draft. A guy with some mobility and some inventiveness, but not really the processor type that you'd like to see back there, especially for an advanced prospect, or of age at least, where you're looking for him to 1, 2, 3, 4 it, and it's more one and go. But the go can be good because he can use his legs on the go thing. So he does provide that skill set to it, and maybe perhaps a little bit more upside than what you were looking at there with PJ Walker, who did not give you very much there as far as in the preseason. It was looking pretty much uphill there for him, and especially the lack of using legs from his standpoint, being that that's really, if you're going to have that guy, you need him to be using his legs if he's not going to be the passer you'd hope he could be. Again, we get to the third quarterback, it's kind of all she wrote anyway. So let's be real with that part of it. I'm not going to forsake that we'll be okay now they got this guy. We're in steady hands then. But it's better. It's improved. Bo Nix is going to be getting his start this week for the first time for the Denver Broncos. Is a rookie now starting week 1 since John Elway, the high-profile quarterback for them back in the day, and they can only hope that Nix is able to have Elway's type of career. But there will be no sitting Bo Nix. He's going to get his first start. This led me down the little bit of the trail of looking at and wanting to see what has been the record recently of quarterbacks over the last 10 years in their very first start as a rookie. I thought it would be interesting kind of data to take a look at, and let's see what you guys come away with it on your side of it. So the overall record from 2013 to 2022, because I'm not paying for the Chat GPT thing, and the record's not been great if you go 13 last year, 2023. But the record from 13 to 22 was 18 wins and 48 losses in the collective of the games started by rookie quarterbacks over that time period in their first game. So history is favoring us. Obviously, these teams tend to start these quarterbacks, don't tend to be good teams. There's some other, this data doesn't tell you a lot as far as really educating you fully on why those losses came about. Because you can look at it on the surface and say, bad quarterback rookie, team lose. It's probably a lot of cases a little bit more to it than that, but in general terms, favors, and I should have probably pared this down further to see on those 18 wins, how many of those wins happened at home or on the road. I would reckon to guess that probably 2/3 of those wins happened at home, which would only then further probably your odds here in this game for your Seahawks, and why many of us are kind of bullish on the Hawks in this first game against the Broncos. Not that the Broncos aren't good and that they're not good, but that they don't provide a challenge. They provide a challenge, but that as you look at least on paper and from a historical standpoint, it does factor into your favor a little bit. Now, first time coaches in their first starts, somebody could counter me with that data as well. It's like 72 and 132 or something like that. So that's another stat somebody can kind of pose to, but make of that what you will. We've got the throwbacks coming this week, which automatically adds 10% power to the team as a whole. Now, somebody's instantly in the chat saying Dallas Cowboys, Brandon. What about Dallas? How much power did it have at that point? Okay, look, it adds 10%. If there's a negative factor of 15, it's off-suited, isn't it? You're still in Negativeville. And we saw the power of the 10% on offense. We saw what it did to DK Metcalf. Came pretty much like incredible Hulk all of a sudden. So, it's there. Well, defense has to hold up its end of the bargain. Can't be negative 15 on the 10. But we know they're better in it. We know they look much, much nicer in it. And I'm really looking forward to doing the opening game of the season. Just would be nice if the Broncos were doing the throwbacks too. I mean, that for an old head like me, a guy that's been around many a year, be able to get back and check out the old uniforms I used to see in my youth out there in the Kingdom would be pretty cool. But whatever, NFL's stupid. NFL's dumb. We've gotten some more discussion over the last couple of days from some of these players, and I wanted to play just a couple of quick little sound bites for you guys because it's not my first rodeo with change of coaches here in Seattle or looking out throughout the league. Many of you as well follow the game in this kind of way, where you look at what happens in situations with coaches leaving and moving on and how they set the stage in places. And you just kind of watch how these guys go about their moves, how the players talk about them as they walk in. Because so much of course, a coach turning a team into a winner is getting the buy-in, and the buy-in being sometimes the hardest part of the process to cinch up. But the thing that stood out to me with looking at these players and hearing from these players over the course of all of this training camp, as there have been so many of these press conferences and interviews, is just how often the players speak about how smart Mike Macdonald is, how much confidence exudes from them in what they're feeling about what this defense is going to do and where it's going to go and its potential. You can see how and again, I understand it's a new regime and they're going to see all the right things, and there's a little bit of this, well, it's a brown-nosing thing, Brandon. They're just, and I just think you can take a bit of a cynical outlook on that and say it's just that they're just kissing up to the new teacher. But it feels also like this isn't always the way of what you hear from other stops and places in the way that players will talk about it. If a player comes in, they're speaking about in press conferences with new Mike Holmgren coach. Luckily, I was old enough to be around as he was coming on board, and you're hearing about the players talk about him. Speaking about the precision of his offense, about the explosiveness of his offense within that, and how this is, he's in on all of these details. And indeed, offense ended up being a big driving force through a lot of Holmgren's time here when he was at his best, when the team was at their best. But you're hearing the players talk of it in that specific way to what it was going to be. And you're hearing the same kind of thing from the defensive players in the way they're talking about this defense. And when you hear of other coaches go to other places, sometimes there's this almost lukewarm feeling at times. You can feel a coach maybe not quite sinking in, or maybe this is going to take him a little bit of time to get his message fully across, or you don't hear the players in every interview just speaking about how smart and on it this guy is. And so many players have even said over and over again how Mike Macdonald doesn't even know how smart he is. Multiple guys have put it in that way. But let me just play a couple of quick clips here back to back, kind of give you guys an idea of what I'm kind of hearing from when I'm watching these press conferences, because this is, to a man, to a player, something I'm hearing over and over again.
How has it been with Mike Macdonald now you've gotten to know him, be around him for several years now?
Oh, it's been real good. I say it all the time. I feel like he brought back old school football, something that, it's no shots or anything, but I feel like it's been missed for a little bit. we bring the physicality back, bring the mentality back of playing grown man football for all 4 quarters.
Does your coach have kind of an old school mentality?
I think he does. The way we practice, I think it shows that, us going out here, putting the pads on, getting a little razzle-dazzle here and there, getting a little rough around the edges. Practice gets intense sometimes, but that's what you need as a football team. It's a grown man sport.
To put a blame game on anybody, and I think Jaron Reed chose his words very carefully there and not trying to put any blame game on anybody else, but there is a feeling over the last few years, and from a toughness standpoint, from a ruggedness standpoint, from a physicality standpoint, that the stuff was sort of dripping away recently from Seahawks teams, both I would say offensively and defensively, quite frankly. And it stood out because, of course, of how fierce it was back in the early 2010s when everything was, I think, on the other end of that scale, where it stood out just how hyper competitive the team was, how physical they were, how almost mean they were in their physicality. And this seemed to have kind of dipped recently. And I think Jaron Reed's noting a little bit of that dip in that return here. A part that we haven't talked about a lot here is as we get into the X's and O's with Mike Macdonald, but also the background and understanding of how to build a really tough team, a strong team, a team that maybe is not going to have as many issues in, let's say, tackling, as has been kind of problematic in recent years, getting controlled in the trenches at the line of scrimmage on a weekly basis at times, as happened over the last few years. This is one of the things that he also does bring to the table, though, that we don't talk about it on top of all of the great X's and O's type stuff.
What's Mike Macdonald like as a head coach? What feels different?
Honestly, he a great coach, but I feel like what makes it feel much different is that, in the atmosphere, you can just feel that, it's becoming more of like a real team for real. Like, it's starting to become like a NFL like type atmosphere. I'm not saying it wasn't before, but you just can feel, a difference for real and a shift of culture. And he's a mastermind for real, and it's just different when you have a coach that understands the players and how the players are playing in certain positions on the field. It's clips of coaches going out there getting reps at the spots the players would be out. Coach would be out of nickel, coach would be out of corner spot, and it's crazy because I ain't never seen that before, because some people, they just coach the game and coach the game, but it's different when you coach a game and you're able to relate to your players based off the speeds that they are playing at, because you put your coaches and yourself in those positions to work out a scheme and see how it's going to work for your team. So just different things like that. It feels great to have him as a head coach, and I feel like he's going to lead us, to the right direction. And I feel like so far, week 1 is going to be the step we take as a team, and we're going to see where we at even more.
So again, just speaking of the intelligence on McDonald, it's the craftiness of this defense and its capability and what it can do and what it's going to disguise. I think this is part of why this has resonated with the players so quickly, is that they can see how this will work. They can understand how this is going to freak kind of offenses out. I think even in the preseason, you were seeing the flashes of it, and that was really merely with what they were doing with the changes in coverages on the back end. It really wasn't exemplified by what they were doing with stacked boxes or the changes in fronts. There was a little bit of that mixed in at times, don't get me wrong. There was some of it sprinkled in, but it was very rarely so, and not to the degree as it's going to be as we get into the season with McDonald fully. And these players are feeling it and seeing it in practice. And you can't, as I've said in the past, I've said this about the recent seasons too, you can't fake the players out on this. They're going to be able to see it true. They're smart enough to recognize when there's something that they're in that can work, and when they're recognizing there's in something that's not necessarily working quite as well. Here's Witherspoon a little bit with just a little bit more thoughts on this.
What do you like about this defense in the way that it should highlight your skills?
You don't know what we're going to be running at the time. So it might look like one thing and it'll be another. Then it might look like something and actually be that. But you'll never know at the time. So I think that's one of the biggest things about it, and it's just very creative. So
it's coming together really quickly, I think, for the D in practice, is the feeling I'm getting from the way that they're talking about this. A little bit of what you might expect on this, too, is if you're getting some issues and bumps in the road and they're saying, you just hear things talked about in a certain different way. It's not that they come out and they say, hey, we're struggling, man. We can't pick this thing up. It wouldn't come out like that in the press conference, but they wouldn't be exuding with such confidence in how they're getting it. And I think part of him being so smart, them recognizing it, them seeing it work on the practice field, is then building a little bit of that confidence in how they're going to play. I think it's going to help them to play better out the gate. This is a little bit of why I have upped my ante overall from maybe where we started with McDonald hired to where we arrived now as far as the overall outlook for this season and the record and where I see the Seahawks team going. But it's in big part because of this. He has, I think, pushed this onboarding process through fast. And if we think about it, you got the Michigan onboarding process, happens very quickly, not only brings the players up to speed, but brings the coaches up to speed, jumps right into the Ravens. Onboarding process happens within 10 games there, very fast and up to speed for a DC in the NFL. Bam, does he get here, and is he able to even hasten that process now? Because you would think as you have to teach in different areas like that, that it starts to speed a little bit of that clock up. You get a little bit better. You're able to cut certain little corners that you don't have to go all the way around and get it packaged and presented and put forward much quicker, and then get the players on board and just faster from it. We'll see. This is a big question mark, of course, for this year, but the way the players are talking about it, the confidence they're speaking with, and just the things that they're really touching on, which is what we would think this defense is going to be able to bring about as far as great play goes and how they're going to stop offenses, is exactly what you're hearing from them. So let's get to a couple of other items here. Of course, we got some segments here on a weekly roundup we're going to do. A couple just some varied things I want to show you guys, and just some variety of stuff here that I've been kind of digging around, looking at. Here's your strength of schedule as we head into this season. Of course, this is going to be based on last year's strength of schedule. Another thing that does it to me, again, you try to build your parts into where you're going to forecast a team. I think some of this comes into play a little bit as well. You can see the Atlanta Falcons, New Orleans Saints, Chicago Bears, Carolina Panthers, Chargers all coming in with a very low percentage rate on their opponents. We've got the Cleveland Browns with the highest strength of schedule in the National Football League. The Ravens right behind them, the Steelers in there. Sorry, Russ. Ain't going to be easy there. Texans in there as well, Green Bay. So a lot of these teams that are even going to be really good teams this upcoming year are looking at over 500 records, at least as far as the schedule looks on paper. And I know the prior year is not always a good metric. I've got something for those people in the chat that say something about that here. I've got you. I know. I got you. But if we do look at the Seattle Seahawks here, they do sit pretty far down on that list, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20th, 21, 22, where the winning percentage of their opponents this upcoming season is .488. So below 500 record for their opponents from the prior year. Not too bad for the Seahawks this year as you look for them to try to make a playoff push. That definitely does help. And this matches up when you've looked at the schedule, where you can see the games on the schedule having not the gauntlet of last year and not as many as tough opponents as last year maybe. It's not an easy schedule necessarily, but just not as daunting as last season. This is the strength of schedule based off of the Vegas forecasting win total. So all of these teams in the NFL have been forecasted by the Vegas to win a certain amount of games. And so let's base the strength of schedule off of what they're saying with that, because Vegas does very often tend to be right. They've got money on the line, right? They got a reason to be right. And if you notice on this one, it's kind of funny. The strength of schedule on this one, after this is adjusted for the Vegas forecast, which is more now about what's coming forward in the year, not what happened prior, of course, still has Seattle right at 500. So right at a 500 record for your opponents this year, even with the Vegas forecasted record. Just something interesting for you to maybe turn over and think about here. But not a tough strength of schedule. Just another little thing that bears in for me when you look at the season and making those record predictions. Now, speaking of record predictions, I won't go through this very fast. I don't know how interested you guys are really going to be in learning about this from my side of it. But hey, let's get it down on the record nonetheless, because these are always fun to do. If you're looking at where I'm looking at as far as the season goes NFL-wise, me and Brendan, of course, last week did a more Seahawks-related prediction schedule, but the model is just more of a season thing here. I went through and kind of looked a little closely at the schedules and where these teams are at and what's going on. I've got the AFC West being where the Bills do fall back just a little bit this year, still 9-8, but I think that defense is going to struggle. Dolphins can't quite take that full step forward. I think the Jets are enough of a problem. If Rodgers can obviously play, that's the caveat. If Rodgers falls apart, you can probably divvy up some of those wins back into the rest of the opponents there, and they're going to be back into that 4 or 5 win kind of area of things. But and then the Bills probably take their spot with it. But if Rodgers stays upright and they get just a little bit better play from their quarterback position, I think that they take that there. I think the Dolphins had some defensive losses this past year. Their offense will remain really good, but it remains to be seen if the defense is going to shore up enough, and I worry about Tua's health, and I'm still not sold on that offensive line. AFC North, Cleveland Browns, Deshaun Watson finally comes back and plays nearly a full season for them. Much like with the Jets, they just need passable quarterback play to improve themselves from where they were last year. Now, they've got a really tough schedule, as I just showed above on that strength of schedule stuff. But with that said, I saw some easy wins still buried within that there. That division is going to be a complete dogfight up and down. No pun intended for Cleveland there. But I had to give them the tip of the nod. You could kind of flip a coin, I think, between them and the Ravens. I just can't buy into the Bengals right now because I'm not sure their defense is as strong as it's been. I'm not sure that their offensive line is in great shape. Steelers have that hard strength of schedule. Quarterback position seems unsuited. The line, for all they tried to rebuild it this offseason, at least based off of preseason, hasn't seemingly looked to have taken quite yet. And maybe that'll come together fully here as the year gets in. And I still have them at 8 wins, so I'm not saying they're going to fall off completely. But yeah, I put them at the back of the bus on that one there for that division, unfortunately. AFC South, I'm buying into the Texans. I think their schedule actually sets up pretty well overall within this division. Will help having Colts and Titans you can kind of beat up on a little bit. Jacksonville Jaguars come up and have a little bit of a stronger year than they did last year. Trevor Lawrence shows why he is worth that contract. Richardson shows flashes with the Colts at the quarterback position up and down, but the Colts still have kind of a spotty up and down roster with it. They're an in-between team. In between teams, that's how you end up at 8 wins on the year. Titans going through kind of a rebuild year. They're doing some fun things as far as the rebuilding of that defense. It's going to take a little bit of time for that offense to kind of get fully ready to go. I do like Levis if they can keep him clean and dial back some of his wild man ways, because he's got quite a few wild man ways that can get that guy injured. Almost did even in the preseason, him taking a big hit needlessly. But still a season where the Tennessee's got some turning around to do, and I don't see it happening this year. AFC West, Chiefs again, 13-4. They take the division. Part of this is on the back of, much like the Texans, you get the feast factor where you're able to beat up on the Broncos and Raiders, I think, in both of the two matchups there. Maybe you split the matchup between the Chargers. That's 5-1 right there. That helps you kind of boost you out as you get out in front of things. And I think that they haven't lost anything this offseason, really, at the end of the day. The defense remains a strength for them to help out with that offense. And they've got maybe a little bit, all they need is a little bit better play from the receivers, and that offense is going to be much, much more improved, where last year they had to kind of get by on just getting by with the wide receiver core, because now those guys could kind of get things solidified. Eagles go 10-7, really as much because the division isn't, in my opinion, in the greatest of shape. The Cowboys seem to be kind of starting to turn things over a little bit. They find themselves in that miserable 8-9 kind of place of things. Commanders do some fun things with Jaden Daniels, but I think that he's going to get himself eventually probably hit and hurt at some point with the way that he plays. He'll give him some great plays and great throws and might even play a large part of the year and give him a lot of encouragement moving forward. Definitely got to learn to just play under control. And the Giants, I don't think I have any explanation needed there. NFC South, the Falcons have gone for it this year. Their strength of schedule, as I showed a second ago, could be argued as being one of the easiest in the NFL. They've made some good go-for-it moves here down the stretch leading into the season, signing Justin Simmons and making the trade for Matt Judon. I'm buying him on that. I like Tampa Bay still at 10-7. I'm not buying into Carolina or New Orleans. NFC North, Green Bay Packers, 13-4. I think what they did last year is one of the youngest teams in football. Should show you that this is a team that's going to be good again here coming into this season. They end up taking the division. Lions 11-6. A lot of people are pushing for them to the Super Bowl this year. I don't quite see that myself, but I do like them at 11-6, and still having a good year. Chicago Bears, a little bit like what you get with the Colts out there, with the little bit of the up and down stuff happening. End up at an 8-9 spot, but they love what they have in Caleb Williams. Vikings are kind of going nowhere this year, just right from the jump. NFC West, we talked about this with Brendan, I believe. 12-5. Niners, I could see them going 13-4 as well, now that they got everybody back in the ranks. 11-6 for your Seahawks, 9-8 for the Los Angeles Rams, and the Cardinals come in at 7-10. 3-game improvement for the Cardinals, but the way some people are talking about them, you'd think that that's almost a disappointment from some people's perspective here, which I wouldn't think it is. They're making some pretty smart moves as far as my awards go. I've got your MVP going to Jordan Love. I didn't write that in there, but Jordan Love is going to be my surprise MVP for you guys. Saquon Barkley is going to be your Offensive Player of the Year. I'm going to go with Will Anderson as your Defensive Player of the Year. Marvin Harrison Jr. as your Offensive Rookie of the Year. And Byron Murphy is the Defensive Rookie of the Year. And everybody's going to be saying, Brandon, you said we can never win those awards. Why are you saying he's going to win it here? Well, maybe some of it's me being hopeful. Maybe some of it's also, though, just taking a look at how many defensive players actually got picked here through the first couple of rounds. And the fact that, he does stand out as a guy that really got as good a chance as anybody, I think, to go and get that. Now, the two there with the Colts is going to get his share of opportunities, but first-year pass rushers don't always come out the gate blowing it up. And not unless they're like top 5 kind of guys, Bosa types or Hutchinson types, Garrett types, and this guy's not exactly that. So we'll see how it goes with it, but those will be my predictions for how I see this one playing out, and I'd like it as a year. I'd feel really good about this upcoming year if our Seahawks can kind of pull that off. We'll get to some of my upcoming bets here for the season that I promised you guys with Underdog Fantasy, but let's get to some of the segments that we got going on this week. Now, our segments in this weekly roundup will typically have me showing you the PFF scores. Can't do that this week. Can't do the underrated hero of the week. Can't do the play call of the week. There's some things I'm going to have to cut out here a little bit just because we don't have it this week. But I do have a few things we are going to include for you here that I think you guys are going to like. First up, let's go to a very specific place when it comes to this segment this week. Let's not look at any of the other teams. Look at one specific team because there's going to be one daunting question. I'm going to keep using daunting tonight. That's my word of the day today. We're going to have one question I know that's hanging out there as far as from this one team in our division right now. And let's cover this question right here and now in tracking the NFC West. Okay, we're looking at the Niners. You're looking at me, looking at the Niners. I'm looking at you, looking at the Niners, looking at them. And we're all going, how are they pulling this off? How are they making all this happen? How are they clearing all of this money? How are they able to pay for everyone? And this is a very good question. Brandon Ayuk is now back in the fold. Trent Williams, after yesterday, back in the fold. We do not yet know the details of the Trent Williams situation. So we got to put that one a little bit on the back burner when we look at this and try to kind of understand conceptually what it is the Niners are doing right now and how they're pulling this off. So let's go over here for a second and take a look at a couple things. First up, let's look at the salary cap for the San Francisco 49ers for the 2024 season as we are right now. Now, bottom of the list I want to start you off with here. Look to the bottom right-hand corner. You see suspended Trent Williams. $10,756,000. That's the dead money he would account for essentially if he's not active. This is why I say this is before we have the update. This is before we actually have the update for these new numbers yet that will add to this season's contract. Now, they've already bonused base to bonus Deebo Samuel in recent days, and I think they just did somebody else, by the way. So you can notice on this, look at the base salaries running down the line here from the Niners. First on the left-hand column under base salary, look at all of those $1.125 million deals. That's base salary. That's the bare minimum for a veteran that you can pay in base salary, and you can see that rolling down the line. And Deebo added in with this on this. So this is where they first and foremost are creating their cap space by everything going to bonus, everything going to guarantees, everything going to void years. Void years. Remember this part of the process as I speak to it. So technically right now, over the cap here, when I show you here is their cap space. They're sitting at the head of the stack with $65 million in cap space. But this is before the Trent Williams deal is clicked in first. And understand, they're maximizing everything to right now for this load of cap space that can eventually be rolled into next year's cap that's unused. But they are doing that at the cost of the long term. Let me show you what I mean by that. When we go into the cap, this is 2024 cap. This is minus the Trent Williams deal, of course. Now, when we go to 2025, this is where the old Trent Williams deal is still on the books here for them. But you can see that when you look to the far right-hand column here, that's your post-June 1st. So that's if you designated a guy that like Russell was done with the Broncos, where you designate him a post-June 1st, you split the dead money into 2 years, and that maximizes the savings for that upcoming year. But then you, of course, push the books onto the next. You push half of the dead money into the next year's books when you do that. What stands out here with the Niners when you look at 2025, if you guys will notice with this, is that there is not a lot of guys here as you go down that right-hand column there to where even if you make them a post-June 1st designation, you can save a significant amount of money. So flexibility, a lack of flexibility here as they go into the future, locking themselves in the way. Now they've got the roster, they got them set, but a couple injuries happen. They don't have necessarily the pivot point to move in this direction. Because when you do go back to that situation that does show them with the cap space right now at $65 million. So I'll highlight it right here, $65 million at the top. When we go to 2025, there are third from the bottom. When we go there, let me show you at the bottom here. Sorry guys, 1 second. So if I go all the way to the bottom here, you can see them with only the Browns and Saints below them, where they're sitting at negative $38 million right now. And this is before the new Trent Williams money has hit the books for them. So while the 65's there on the top, what I would say is that with Trent Williams' deal, it's probably going to be something like 50. There's the 50 million negative on the other side of it that's going to, they're hoping, they want to wrap this 65 into the 50 next year. That's a $15 million offsuit in general terms here. And remember, the Brock Purdy contract is coming into next year's contract, and they don't have the flexibility. To show you some of the numbers that I think kind of exemplify where it gets worrisome from their standpoint is it becomes the dead money that starts to add up over time. That's the stuff that starts to be kind of an issue. Look here at the bottom spot here with with some of the dead money you've got in the books here. $10.3 million to Eric Armstead, $5.5 to Trey Lance. Deshaun Gibson's on our roster right now, but you know what? The Niners are paying him $1 million. Cameron Latu, former second-round pick. These are some small deals, but it adds up to $24 million of dead money. Let's see where they're at already for 2025 dead money-wise. Well, we're already at 15.5 for Eric Armstead. Latu, Gray, Kingston is at basically another, $700,000 at that point. So $16.5 million in dead money as we stand only right now. So we come back again to that flexibility. You're already starting to bear into the dead money into future years. And again, to just kind of further continue to show this, we look at the Brandon Ayuk contract. They've lowered the cap contract on it very low through these first couple of years. But you do end up having to pay the price. So you keep it down at 5.725 right now. And it does climb up. I'm in 2027 here. Let me show you, sorry. I'm in 2027 here where you see there's a $42 million cap hit for Brandon Ayuk. Now, 49er content creator would tell me, yeah, but that's when they're going to cut him. You're also going to be sitting on at that point on the books of probably having McCaffrey eating dead money with him. You'll be eating probably dead money with Debo by that point. You'll be eating dead money with Trent Williams, who will be retired by this point in 2027. There's no way he's playing at this point. Do they have the means and ability to do that? Can they still remain competitive at that point? We'll see. I remain skeptical is my bottom line point on this. And if you notice on this, look at the void. Do you guys see the void thing going down the line there? Do you guys see the void thing? Take a look at the void thing in 2027. Doesn't that look weird to you? Isn't that a little bit odd? Why wouldn't they have base salary? Why would it say void and they don't have base salary associated with their names on that far left-hand column? Because they're no longer on the roster. Those are voided years, absent the dead money of releasing them. Absent the dead money of releasing them, those are the voided years they're burying on the back end of these deals. They will have to pay the piper. This is not what we call necessarily a healthy way to manage the cap. I give the Broncos credit here because you are, in this case, doing everything you can to maximize your Super Bowl window. But you're doing it in a lot of ways to a pretty extreme degree. And it means when the price does come to be owed, you're going to have to pay it. You look right now, Nick Bosa, highest paid positional rank where he stands. Brandon Ayuk, top 5. Trent Williams, he was top 3. He is now going to be the highest paid left tackle in the sport. Deebo Samuel, 14th. Javon Hargrave, 11th. Fred Warner, second highest paid inside linebacker of the sport. Christian McCaffrey, the highest paid running back. George Kittle, the third highest paid tight end. Kyle Juszczyk, he's a tight end, but he's still making $5 million. And Brock Purdy is your 79th highest paid quarterback. So where's this going? By next year, you're going to pay Purdy $55 million. Can you still afford to do all that? No, you can't. Now you start releasing guys. Now you start hitting into the voidable end of things that I just showed you guys. Now you start running into that void year period, 2025. Is there any void years in 2026? Oh, look, there is. It starts in 25 with Chadarius Ward, who will not probably be on the roster, but still be costing them $4.9 million. Chadarius Ward, again, another $4.9 million in 26. Deebo Samuel, 8.7. George Kittle, Dre Greenlaw, Kyle Juszczyk, Leonard Floyd, Ida Gross-Mastos, Malik Collins. So I know many of you are going, well, it just says void. I don't understand. This is where I got to make sure I'm doing a good job of showing you, right? Let's look at the Seahawks situation, shall we? Do you see a difference? Let's take a look at our 26 situation. Well, we got one void year for $2.5 million on Draymond, and 1 year of void for $2.5 million, 27. But all of those other ones are deals. Those aren't void years there. Those are guys that are on the books. No voided years in 2025, by the way. Part of why I've said in 2025, people will try to freak out in 25 and say, we got no cap space. We got no cap space in 25. I go, no, it's about cap flexibility. We've not put ourselves into that same corner that the Niners have had. So you can see that just look at those voided year contracts. Those are guys off the books, no longer playing for your team. You're still paying for them. And you buried all that money, like a guy burying money in the backyard of his house and in the walls of his house. Like, yeah, that's great. It's like, I don't know. Don't be surprised when it's just gone, though. But that's how they've done it. That's how they pulled this Ayuk off. That's how they continue to pay these folks. I know it's frustrating to see, but you got to give the Niners front office credit in that they are trying to maximize this window out for everything it is. I often say, know thyself. If you're a contending team, understand that doesn't happen often. You're lucky to find yourself in that window. Take advantage of it. Take advantage of it fully. But then know there will be a price to be paid on the other side of it. There is no free pass here. The cap is not fake. It does exist. The price is having to be paid, and it will be paid eventually by the Niners. One way or the other. In this life or the next. All right, let's get to a fun little segment here that I've been putting together here. I hope you guys will like this. Every week here, I'm going to be going to my nephew. I call him Lil Hawkeye. And he's a man of predictions. He knows his way around forecasting where things are going to go, how they're going to happen, and the way that this stuff is all going to play out. So we got a double dip of predictions here for you today for this upcoming Bronco game. I'm going to have my nephew, and I'm bringing in Pumpkin the cat. This girl laying right next to me. I've got two film predictions here to make you feel a little bit more warm and fuzzy about this upcoming Seahawks game, because when you use the power of a child and an animal, that is a prediction you can take to the bank. So let's get to Little Hawkeye Predicts.
Bonix at Lumen? Are you kidding me? Seahawks are going to f***ing own Bonix. Seahawks 27-13. Believe it. Go Hawks.
There you go. Nephew's got it. Take it to the bank. Now, if you didn't already feel a little bit assured right there, well, okay, all right. I'll make you feel a little bit more assured. How about let's see what Pumpkin's got to say about this. All right. Here we go. Every week we will be doing this as well. We put salmon at the end of a long hallway. We put cards of each team up, well displayed, 2 camera angles so I can't cheat. And we let her decide who will win, who will lose. I can't cook the books here. I'm not putting her over the top. It's salmon on both plates. There's not one better salmon here, one worse. So let's see what Pumpkin predicts here for this upcoming week. Here we go. We've got confirmation. We've got confirmation. And if you'll notice here, she comes out the side. She starts going to the Bronco card. But then she's like, no, wait, this team's going to win over here. Goes over, verifies it with the Seahawks card, makes the pick, eats the salmon on that side. So both Little Hawkeye and Pumpkin are predicting a win this week here for your Seahawks. I'm feeling pretty good about this one. If you didn't already feel good about it, you should now. We'll be doing that every week this week here on the weekly roundup. We'll be having those the Pumpkin predicts and Lil Hawkeye predicts, but they're feeling confident. They're feeling good about where this is all standing. So we'll see how it goes with that. All right, well, let's bounce over to you guys here in the chat. See where we're at. I'm behind on a couple of donos. Let me catch up on a few of those. Sorry about that. I wanted to get through kind of our initial thrust on this one. But please do, if you could, for me, folks, hit that like button. We just got past 16,600 subscribers. We are rolling along here towards 20,000, trying to get there as well. So if you can get subbed up, I'd love it as well on that side of it. But do please hit that like button for me today, please. Let me catch up on a couple of these domnos. Jeffrey Thistle, thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate you for that, Jeffrey. He says, I heard the horrible news that Commissioner of Football is now allowing ownership by committee. We're so boned. I'm terrified now. Yeah, it's not good. Committee is not, I think, for the benefit at all. It's the best ownership in NFL history has come from singular places. I don't think, have we ever looked at an ownership group? That ownership group, they were so intelligent out there in football. You talk about owners, guys who have a strong understanding and vision, be it a Paul Allen or a Kraft. Take your pick of a variety of different ends. The Maras, back in when they were actually able to get their stuff together out there in New York. And I don't think that you necessarily say it by committees with it, but teams are getting expensive. It takes a lot, I guess, to put the put it all together in that way. One thing that this could open the door for, in a way, Jeffrey, is we've heard of the former LOB folks, those guys out there, former players who would love to come in on an ownership package group potentially, and could that maybe be a benefit where you now have an ownership group that's comprised of former players. And does this open a little bit more of that door to those former players to get those kind of stakes in the team without having to come up with $1 billion? Maybe, I don't know. But I can understand where, as we've seen with right now with the Mariners organization and with baseball, just the problematic nature at times of having too many cooks in the kitchen, especially when we don't have a head chef. But thank you, Jeffrey. I appreciate the $5 donation. Very kind of you, man. Taker610, thank you for the $5 donation as well. Have you heard the claim that the Chiefs have not had a holding call in 3 straight Super Bowls? Heard this complaint from my 49ers fan coworker. Kind of a landmine question a bit. That's why I'm being very careful in my answer here. And reason being is just, there's a ground you go on to here where you have people go, yes, this is rigged. NFL's rigged. It is rigged. And I don't think the NFL is necessarily rigged, but I do have sometimes my suspicions about things that make me wonder. You can find a cut up of, I think that's pretty realistic, of the last game against the Niners and the Chiefs, and looking at some of the plays of the offensive line for the Chiefs and the way that they were pass protecting, where there were some obvious holds going on, where there's holds going on where if it was a Seahawks game in the middle of a season, flags would be a flying. And you weren't seeing that be the case. And there is some equivalency being drawn here where on the other side of the ball, you are letting them play as well to a degree. The issue comes down to where the NFL then tactically chooses to call it by the letter of the law. I was hearing a former NFL player talk about lamenting this as well and how much this would piss him off on a random video that came up this week speaking about this, a guy that had a long career in the league. And he would say, the thing that pissed me off, and these officials would do this, is they have a whole game where they're calling it a certain way, and then you get down to the wire, and then they suddenly decide they're going to call it a different way. And there's 2 things that stand out to me with this, I believe, when we had a back-to-back years of it. I think in the Eagles game against, I want to say it's the Chiefs, you have a play down the stretch where the Eagles are going to get a stop, and the officials call defensive holding in the secondary on that very final drive of the game. And they call defensive holding in the secondary for the first time that whole game. Then you come back to next year, and you've got the Bengals and the Rams are driving down on their final drive at an equivalent point in the game to what happened with the Chiefs the prior year. The whole game, you have no defensive holding call occur throughout the whole game. and then you call it on a key point where the Bengals have gotten a stop on the Rams, stopping their drive, and you then allow the drive to continue and then the Rams to score. And it's these kind of moments that get people in a place where I think there is something to this a little bit of, if you're going to, mess with the results in places, this is how you would do it, because this is the most finessable way to do it. And it does stand out a little bit in these past couple of Super Bowls in that way. And I do think that the Chiefs' offensive line at times, I think not just in general of the last few Super Bowls, but I think over the last few years in general, the amount of holding calls that they get are pretty few and far between, especially considering how much Patrick Mahomes scrambles and moves around. Because typically when you're going to have a quarterback moving around as much as he is going to move, there's going to be more holding calls. He's going to break the pocket. Guys are going to still be pulling and holding on. And that doesn't seem to be the case with the Chiefs. Make of that what you will, Taker. So I think this is one place where a 49er fan has a little bit of a rightful point to air a little bit of complaints out on this. It doesn't explain their whole loss completely, but Mahomes is good enough. You don't have to give him help on top of it. Make them earn their way. Earn it. And let's bounce here into the chat with you guys. If you guys do have a question, we have a lot of folks in the chat here with the season kicking off right now. So if that is the case, just do me a favor and do please make sure you reference HawksNest. Brandon, what's up, dude? Whatever, just so I know you're talking to me, because I know sometimes it's internal right now in the chat when we do this. Boo, HawksNest just picked up the Seahawks defense in my Dynasty League. I have a feeling 1 to 2 years, they're going to be the best defense in fantasy when I'm going to try to be competing. Hey, I think that's a good pickup for down the road, especially if even the potential this year maybe. But I definitely like it for a down the road move. If you're in one of those Dynasty Leagues. Jeffrey Thistle says, still not a Trevor Lawrence believer. Dude doesn't have the drive in him. You're not alone, Jeffrey. There's a lot of guys who are not big on where he's at. I think he was walking into a situation there with Jacksonville, which needed a lot of rebuilding, that the Jacksonville Jaguars were a team that was doing what a lot of these teams do, Jeffrey. I talk about that. Lawrence, love Lawrence. Do we have the thing in the right place to take him on? Don't care. He's so good. Just bring him in here. We'll figure out the rest later on. And I think when you do that, that then does mean that it's going to take you a longer period of time to get that guy in the right environment around him for true success. But this is a little bit of me for sure on this one, Jeffrey, more than looking at the past performance on this one fully with it. It's more going, hey, I think he's going to get, the pass catchers are going to be better around him this year. I think the kid from LSU that they drafted is going to be a wonderful fit for him. He gets some more guys catching the ball a little bit more. He looks a little more productive. Defense plays a little bit more better than they have. And I think he looks at a better version of himself than maybe he had been last year even. But we'll see. We'll see on that. Hey, Brandon, did you see the Chiefs are gearing up for the Super Bowl again, giving a huge contract to their refs that they had for the past few years? You know, the ones that juice every game. I had not seen that. No. DVD says, Lawrence is hard to figure out for sure, especially while having an absolute cannon for a throwing arm. What's holding him back? Drops by receivers? Yeah, I think he had as many drops last year by a receiving core as anybody else. And I don't know that he had necessarily the most dynamic of receiving cores on top of it. Travis Etienne is okay as a running back. He doesn't elicit much excitement to me. I don't think any defense is prepping up for a week going, well, let's worry about, Travis Etienne. The offensive line is fine. I don't think the offensive line is great. I don't think his tight end position, Evan Ingram's gotten better out there. That helps him. But defensively, I think that they've been a bit of a work in progress there as well. And so it's... I think it's been a slow process getting things built up around him. They had to get first even just the right head coach in there, which they didn't have at first because he's already had one new head coach. And this is the type of stuff I'm consistent with when I say when you force a quarterback into this kind of place, I'm going to have a lot more patience with that quarterback in getting to his top end because you didn't give him the conditions to succeed. And I'm a big guy in believing that the conditions ultimately will really help determine a quarterback's success or how close they can get to that top end. Joe says, looking forward to repping the 12s in New York versus the Jets. That'll be a hell of a game, Joe. Man, that's going to be a cold one that time of year. Cold game that time of year, I bet. DVD says Lawrence is tough to figure. Oh, sorry, it was Jefferson says Lions are going to find out Goff fails under pressure again. They just might. In AI, I went with the YouTube thing because I thought that would be there was probably maybe a cheaper way, but I thought that was the cheapest that I saw of the spots that are out there. The Hawks, Niners are paying Williams in Bitcoin. Oof. Good luck there, Trent. I guess it worked out for Russell Okung. Probably looking at him and being like, well, he's dad grenade. Isn't CMC also due for a new contract? Didn't they restructure the old one? This is the restructuring and giving him new money now is the locking in there for him. So he's just gotten re-upped. He's not going to get re-upped again there. NIF Sports Track has updated cap status. I know, but I can't read the Sports Track one now. NIF, when they updated their interface, the thing just confuses the hell out of me as I look at it. Their old layout was so easy to kind of understand and read, and this one you have to do pull down charts and stuff to figure out what you're trying to get to. Brian Judge says we're 17 million in the red. Oh man, come on now. Really? Over the cap. Let's take a look here. We're currently at $4.5 million of cap space right now. And then for 2025, yes, $17 million of cap space, negative cap space. But that's a little bit of the point I was making there at the top of this is it's not really the in the red point there, Brian. It's how you're in the red. Are you in the red with flexibility? Are you in the red with voided contracts and no way to get yourself out from big, heavy deals that are sitting on your books? So where you look at the money for the Seahawks, as I was showing that far right-hand column where I can show you with the Niners, there's no way to even get many of those contracts with a post-June 1st designation of saving money. You can see with the Seattle Seahawks, there's a maximization of being able to do that down the line. I mean, you could save a ton of money if you wanted to go down the list of those top 9 deals, basically. Not that you would, but ultimately you have flexibility. That's what you're looking for. You're going to change up Gino's deal. You're going to change up DK's deal. You're going to change up Tyler's deal. None of those are going to remain the same on this into next year. So that the $17 million of negative money are easily obliterated into positive space and where you can make some moves. I'm not saying the Hawks are going to suddenly have $50 million in cap space, but they're not sitting in bad as it might look on the surface of it with that money because, again, it's a difference of how are you locked into that money? Can you get out from under contracts? Can you move around? Or are you locked to this contract? Is it like the old weights they used to have in the cartoons where they put them around the ankles and there was a ball and chain? Is it like that? Where it's like, well, I'm stuck on this thing till 27. And that's the key on this when looking at these cap situations. Joe says, nice work, B. Explain all this. Oh, my pleasure. I knew it was going to be a little bit of the wonderment, and they've gotten creative with this, Joe. The Niners, got to give them credit on it. They're doing some moves. You know, they're doing some moves. Ricardo says, Nwosu and Reed both called out the new coaching staff for being more physical and demanding in practices. Seems like it was safe to assume that Hurt really wasn't fit to be a DC. Yeah, I think that's a little bit of it. I think somebody has mentioned above in the chat on this that I think at times Carroll ran as ferocious as a practices as you'd find when he first walked in the door, but he kept getting kind of penalized, I think, by the NFL, and to fit in alignment with what they were doing, maybe there was a little bit of an over course correction. I don't know on this for sure, but it just does seem to stand out in general terms. It's not even much trying to throw shade to the past, because I'm trying to avoid that as much as I can, to not just, maybe it seems like I don't do a good job of it, but I'm definitely not trying to toss a lot at the prior regime as much as I can with it, but just to say that this thing did exist, where there was this bit of this lack of physicality, a lack of feeling like you were having necessarily the demanding practices to prepare the team right. And this is how you got to, Ricardo, a game 1 of last year with the Rams, and you just you end up falling flat on it. Cyberhawk, in before Pumpkin's picks against the Hawks every week. Oh, it'll be in every week, I promise you. We'll get her with it. I got a whole method now, too, because I set her out around the corner, so I'm not setting her down a hallway where I got to hope she walks down the hallway. I just set her around the corner, and she walks around the corner, and whatever she sees, she goes to. SL says it's a wrap for the Broncos. Misfit, my dad's cat's also named Pumpkin. It just kind of fits, doesn't it? It just kind of fits. I got to get you in the shot. They're liking your predictions. I know, they're liking your predictions. You tell me. I know. Brandon, Warchie says, Brandon, tell me about it. Last year, one of the water boys held on to a water bottle too long, and the referee called the penalty on him. They got no love for us. Yeah, it gets a little bit weird there with that one. You're just a little strange. DVD, you have yourself a good one, man. Brian Judge, Brando, I picked up Anthony Richardson for a flyer. I have Lawrence. Any chance you see Richardson as being startable? I think that there's a boom bust one with that one, Brian. There are people in league circles here, including a guy, Brian, like EJ Snyder, that came onto my show last week, who both love Shane Steichen and then love Anthony Richardson as well. And they feel like that this is going to be an explosion year for Richardson. And I loved Richardson coming out. I had him as a blue chip prospect, which is a hard grade to get for me. I did have him as that. I did think it was going to take him some time to hit that top end, and that he was going to need quite a bit of seasoning to get in there. Not even just time and years to pass, but actual being on the field and playing, which of course last year he didn't have a lot of that. That's part of why I'm trying to kind of go down, giving you just a clear answer on this with Richardson, because he didn't have the things I thought he needed to get to the place of playing at a top end point. But I can't deny as well that there are a lot of people in league circles that look at him as saying, this is a guy who is going to blow it up this year. And he gives you, as a quarterback from a fantasy perspective, the guy with the legs and the arm. So you're going to get 5, 6, 7 touchdowns rushing this year and 700, 800 yards rushing in addition to whatever he gives you as a passer. And that's why I ended up with an 8-9 record for them, is I just felt like it was going to end up kind of being a bit of both rather than one or the other when it came to Richardson and the Colts in general. Lawrence, I've had faith in him for a while. I think he was my favorite quarterback coming out of that class. I didn't think I had him at a generational point. I never said that Lawrence was going to be generational. But I thought that he could be a good top 10 quarterback in this sport. And I think that he can settle into that. I just want to see the supporting cast get a little bit stronger and better around him. And that's the part that I think has been left wanting, in my opinion. Because, again, easy to see why. All these teams do this. If they're there and a quarterback's there, they're just going to take him. They're not going to think about the environment. They're not going to think about the conditions. They're not going to think about whether they're ready to get this guy suitably prepared to be great. They're just going to go take him. Steven says, what do you think about Fant getting to 1,000 yards this year? Hard to see him getting there, Steven. I certainly think his production is going to go up tremendously this year, but I think it's going to go up more to a degree of probably like 65% more than 300% or 250%. So he's going to get targeted more. He's going to make more catches this year, but I don't see Fant getting over 1,000 yards just because there's just only going to be so many balls to go around with this offense, and he is ending up as sort of your at times 5th, 6th, 7th option, depending on who's out on the field, maybe even. Jeffrey Thistle, thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate you for that, Jeffrey. Says 9 out of 10 sports media outlets have us coming in last in our division. Wonder if most of that is too much unknown and they don't want to eat if wrong. Yeah. Yeah, I think that you're onto something with that. I mean, I can say that even as I'm trying to look through, as I was trying to look through and put together a list for my kind of predictions this year and what I was really thinking was going to happen and how this was really going to go. You can feel yourself drawn even kind of naturally, I think, at times to wanting to kind of pick what is already there and what and put the teams up there that, you're not taking any risks or really jumping on anything. That's why I did go with a Will Anderson rather than just your typical Myles Garrett or a TJ Watt and a Saquon Barkley. And maybe you can kind of do something similar to what, Christian McCaffrey did when he went from, Carolina offense to the Niners offense. But I think there's a general drive in when you're doing these predictions to have that happen a bit. I'll just fit to what's happened historically and I'll be mostly right, maybe. And I think the thing that kind of shows its truth of this a bit, Jeffrey, is that they always will seemingly not give you much as to why they think Seattle won't be good. It'll come down to, I don't believe in Geno and new coach. And that's pretty much where their analysis starts and stops. And that's pretty simplistic. And the outlook of I don't believe in Geno at this point needs more explanation with it, quite frankly. I hear too many still at this point with the I don't believe in Geno. Okay, well, why? And they'll at that point not give you anything else, or they'll cherry pick things on Geno that are really a mis kind of representation of the situation. Well, his stats dipped down last year. They'll say stuff like that. Well, his stats. He had the good year the year before, come back the year, and then his stats dipped last year. Does that happen? Did Geno play worse last year? That's our narrative here. Again, it's that thing I go to where there's pre-built-in biases with Geno Smith, and the folks that don't like Geno often show those pre-built biases. I don't think that they're all people that are out on Geno on this, by the way. I'm not painting everybody with the broad brush. But many of the interactions I have, made the way I see a lot of the people's outlook is on Geno, gets built around this. This is their same kind of fundamental argument that they're going to propose in the same manner, in the same way. They might kind of change up the way it looks, but it's still the same view when it's all said and done. And that's why I say with the Jeffrey, with these outlets or the national media on it, we can't give it in, we shouldn't give it much attention really when it's all said and done, because they're not basing it on anything. We'd like to think these are intelligent people thinking things through deeply and trying to weigh out all the factors to come out to what they think is accurately going to happen. But more often than not, I think it's laziness and a lack of looking at things in depth, which has them arrive at these conclusions. Wrong conclusions. Thank you, though, Jeffrey, for the double dip of donation, man. You're awesome, bro. As well as a member of the channel. Moag and Yolan, thank you for the $5 donation. Hey, B, did you ever hear Harbaugh's comments after the elevator incident? Yes, I did. It was the most Harbarian thing I think I've ever heard in my life. People were like bringing up to a conspiracy stuff with him, y'all, where they're like, he probably had the elevator stopped because Herbert gets in the elevator with a couple of players, and there's a couple of, I guess, wives of, I think, coaches on the elevator or something, and the elevator ends up getting stuck. And supposedly Herbert took control and showed great leadership. And Harbaugh's talking about it like Herbert's just conducted a fourth quarter comeback in the Super Bowl for the Super Bowl win, and talking about him just keeping people calm in the elevator and showing true leadership. And it was pure Harbaugh. And I was laughing. This is like what an AI thing would create in this day and age. Some guys just fit the type. They just fit the type, and Harbaugh is always that guy. He's always going to be Harbaugh. You can count on it, y'all. But if you guys haven't had a chance to see that, go check it out. Harbaugh describing Herbert elevator incident on YouTube, and you will laugh your butts off. You go, yep, that's Jim. There we go. Yeah. Jim John. But thank you, Yallin. It's good to see you in the house too tonight, man. Catalyst, who do you guys got winning tomorrow? Will the Ravens get revenge? Chiefs typically tend to be a pretty good team early in the season, especially. They start out where Reed seems to know how to get the team good to go out the jump, ready to start, ready to go. Now, last year you did have the Lions coming into Arrowhead and winning that game in the first game of the season. That was a game they were missing Kelsey. They got Kelsey for this game. Chiefs aren't, you were just getting Chris Jones back, I think, last year too as well. Like you had him all out training camp. He's there. He's in the mix. You do look at what's going on with the Ravens right now, Catalyst, and they lose some coaches here this offseason. Clowney's been moved on from. A couple of players on that team, Kyle Van Noy, Geno Stone. Offensive line losses in Simpson and Morgan Moses. It seems like they're kind of have to retool a little bit this year to me, are the Ravens. And you don't know their footing right now, if there's anything certain there with how it's going to really play out. Now, I did have them playing good this year, but to answer your question, I do think I give the Chiefs the nod for tomorrow. AI says, I've read YouTube TV wasn't very good with games. How much is YouTube TV? Anyone else use it? TIA. I'm trying to use it this year, AI, so I hope it's good. Will YouTube give me free YouTube? So I think it's not what I would do as AI. I don't think it's YouTube TV you want to do. I think what you do is you get like the regular YouTube, the like monthly thing that removes ads. I don't think that's the TV thing because the TV thing is super kind of expensive. And then just get the NFL package if you're going to get it. That's how I do it. Maxwell Hawksnest, what makes you so high on Green Bay? I believe that they had the third youngest roster in the NFL last year, and they were a poor Jordan Love decision away from meeting the Lions and beating the brakes off the Lions and going to the Super Bowl. So I would say that being that young and that good last year and showing that kind of growth like they did in a year where nobody's going to expect it, I think that Jordan Love has solidified himself as that next quarterback in line with the Packers. I'm not going to say he's going to be as good as Favre or Rodgers, but that he has shown that he can be a very good quarterback in this league and execute this offense at a pretty high level. The guys that they've drafted in recent years are young playmakers that I'm only expecting to continue to develop. Josh Jacobs has been one of the best running backs in the league the last few years, and even if he only gives them 1 year of really good, great performance from the position, that's a problem for defenses that they have to account for and can't now just load up on the passing game of the pack. And then when it comes to their defense, I think the defense is going to be a bit of a question, but that there's enough strong parts in there and what they've done that remain. That certainly I think the offense is going to carry a lot for them, but I think that defense is going to have some young guys coming forward as well, and it just clicks in right for them on that. But it's as much about the faith of what I see from them in their offense, and they have a team building concept that sort of stands the test of time. It's not always one that makes a lot of sense to me, but it's one that's hard to deny at this point. As you watch them have the year they have last year, just moving on from Aaron, eating all that. Let's remember all the dead money they had to eat on the Aaron deal to move on from him at that point, and yet they still accomplished what they accomplished. Stimpy, Hawksnest, have you listened to Dodson's press conference today? The way he talks and presents himself, he's going to be special. The way he talks about Mac, he's going to be very special. I did get a chance, I didn't have a chance to watch the DK one, Stimpy, but I did get a chance right before we went live today to look at the Dodson one, and he is a ball of energy, and presents himself very well. I mean, all these players really do, and when they speak and talk, and well composed, just great all the way around. And he seems like a guy that's, ready to take advantage here, ready to go. And a guy that, that's chomping at the bit, Stimpy, because he's had to wait behind some really good linebackers there at Buffalo to get this opportunity and chance. And he's got a lot on the line this year. He goes out and has a great year. He can go make a very, very nice contract. He can go be paid 15, 16, 17 million per year if he can realize the type of player he has as the potential inside of him. And he's in a defense that's going to maximize his skill set because it's a rounded skill set. It's not a skill set of just put this guy here in this lane and tell him to operate in this lane and tell him to not deviate from the lane. No, instead it is this. He can go here, he can go here, he can go here. He can take the off ramp. If you need him to do a U-turn, he can pop the UE on the freeway if you need as well. And Dodson's got that. And I'm very excited and have emerged more and more excited when I watched just the more tape in Buffalo and what he was doing and how he was picking things up and his instincts. And he's a very smart player, but he's got some physical ability too as well. So I think he's going to fit here really good. And it was great to hear what he told. Cool to hear him talk to Stimpy about Tyrese Knight and the development of Tyrese Knight and what he sees as the sky's the limit for that guy. That was always all the much more encouraging for us when we're looking at Tyrese Knight in the future and hoping he can be a guy that settles in there. I mean, maybe long term we're going to have it is, Knight and Dodson there as our two inside linebackers. We'll just have to see. But he spoke with a lot of enthusiasm, and it got me hyped up for game day. It's a good way to get me hyped to just start off the show. Just listen to Dodson talk. Yeah, it's the YouTube Premium. That's the one I would get, where that's the one that no ads on that. Jace, if you're in an area using an antenna, it's free, and you'll get all the games except ones on Prime. I think he was talking about from Oregon, Jace, but that's a great suggestion, as you can still go get those rabbit ears for real cheap and find a way to make it work with that. AI says, I have a metal roof. Antenna won't work. Oh, no. That sucks. Ricardo says, there are definitely special rules for Mahomes. Whenever Mahomes scrambles, they hold their flags, holding galore. Yeah, he pops out of the pocket, and that's the flag you see most often, right? As you have the tackle get engaged with the guy across from him, and the tackle's engaged, and it's a clean block to start. Mahomes is behind him, and Mahomes does his little, we saw with Russell Wilson at times. Jermaine Ifedi was awful about this, where Jermaine could never release the guy on a timely fashion, because with the tackle, it's tough on these tackles. These scrambling quarterbacks, they break the pocket. You break outside of my outside shoulder here as I'm locked up in this block. I've got to release the guy. I can't hold the guy on as he wants to then go pull away to the quarterback who's scrambling away. And when you do watch the Chiefs, a lot of what stands out to me, on top of that stupid kickstart crap that they do, where the guy, Juwan Jennings, right, or whatever his name is, not Juwan Jennings, but Juwan Taylor, I think it is, where he does that stupid, huge kick step, the same thing Lane Johnson would do, that is, to me, cheating. I know that there's like guys online, no, it's not technically, you can give me a break. It's cheating. So you see that, but then you see they'll get him in the deal where they're holding them there and they break the pocket and they still will be pulling them in and holding them in, and it's obvious, you can see it, and then it doesn't get a lot of calls at times against the Chiefs. Jeffrey says the Colts ran Richardson too much. If they try to play him like Cam, it's not going to last long. I agree, Jeffrey. I thought that this was going to be another key point of how you develop Richardson. It's why I wanted him to sit for a year, because you put him out there and you start him in the first year, and the draw is going to be to do the Robert Griffin thing. Oh, man, the guy's fast. Oh, man, the guy's good with the ball in his hands. Oh, man, the guy can't really process. Oh, man, the guy can't really read defenses. I know. We'll run a college gimmicky offense for him. And I think that that's a little bit of what was going on with Richardson last year. Maybe not to the same extreme degree of Griffin, where the Washington Redskin offense at the time basically became Baylor. But, man, it's not the best long-term prognosis for me for Richardson, is to have him running read option play 65% of the time, it felt like, and especially having him carry that ball that much. He is not Cam. You're right. AI says Lawrence looked sharp in the preseason, improved. Guys keep getting better and better. Another good point you touch on there is that we think of these quarterbacks getting in the league and that they're going to play their year or two and they're going to get to where they're going to get, and that's where they got, and they're done. I was talking about this a little bit with my guy from Let's Talk Broncos, where we're speaking about how these quarterbacks are, in actuality, it's a step case, a staircase. And it's a staircase that exists over the course of their career. It's not one where they come in and you go 1, 2 steps, I am who I am, and that's what I am as a quarterback for the rest of my career. It's that you continue to go up the steps, you continue to improve, especially if you've got the hunger and the desire to really, truly get better. Now, that's where that comes down to individually, the player-by-player basis. But let's say we have a guy that is hungry. Let's say we have a guy that does want to continue to keep improving, you will, but it will take that time. It's not something I think you can necessarily just shortcut. AI says Fant's a really bad blocker. It's not the strength of his game. I'll say that. He's gotten passable at it, but it's not the forefront of what he does. ZZ says it's a trend to hate on Geno. They don't watch film. I agree, ZZ. I agree. Part of that, when you try to pull for an explanation from them, how you can't get really much of an explanation. It comes down to things that are just paper thin. SL, Mahomes is not our problem. Tell the rest of the FC to get good. First was NBA style no-look passes. Now the NFL Golden Boy is throwing behind the back passes. Dude was created to play quarterback. I don't want to take away from Mahomes' greatness on that, Mahomes. I think that, or SL, I do definitely think that he's getting these kind of benefit of the doubts on these calls, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he is by far the best quarterback in the sport right now. Max says, Geno Smith's so good at throwing footballs. Boy, is he ever. It was fun to watch little breakdown. I'm glad he did it too. JT O'Sullivan, quarterback camp, did a little breakdown of Geno Smith and his little preseason play. And it was fun to watch him talk about Geno and some of the ways that he spoke about him. And, a guy that definitely, I'd love to be able to talk to JT a little bit about Geno. He had some really good insights in that little video that he did. He always does, though. Regardless, does anyone else think the officiating in the NFL is horribly amateurish and out of date? For a multi-million-dollar league, they are relying on 5 old dudes to keep track of 22 players. Yeah. It's a place that they've left a lot of room for people to bitch and moan and to think that there's something fixed. And sometimes maybe just by the ineptitude of the officiating. And I think that in our organization here in Seattle, we have some of the most brutal moments in our collective history of officials costing us with bad calls. And I would certainly applaud them trying to work to try to make this better. Jeffrey says, if you listen to them talk about the Seahawks, it becomes obvious they don't watch us. Agreed. I've gotten the same sense of it. There's not much there. Yui says, be your fish are starting to give a strong vibe. I'm here for it. Hell yeah, man. I'm playing around with the facial hair right now. I'll probably go, the plan is, Yui, I'm thinking about doing some Mike Macdonald riff videos and go get some brown contacts and pull up the green screen and have a little bit of fun with it. But I was getting there shaving. I was kind of like, we'll go Dom Juan Brando. How about that? Dom Juan Brando. That's what the 2024 season is going to be. Joe agrees. He says the officiating needs to get much better. Boy, does it ever, Joe. Good to see you in the chat, Huey. Hope you're doing well, man. SL Hazard, the Ringer has Geno as a top 10 quarterback. Well, that's good to see. Let's go, Ringer. Somebody's getting it right out there. Brian Judge, Geno is a stud. He's not Mahomes or Allen, but he's exactly what the Seahawks need right now. I'll die on that hill. Love Geno at the starting quarterback position for the Seahawks this year. I'm exactly in the same place you are, Brian, on this. Exactly the same place. And I do believe if you have other parts of this team that do come together and came together fast, this offensive line could get structured up into a functional level. If the defense can pull itself up to a near, like, let's say, a top 10 state of things, with the special teams unit you have, what the weapons he has on offense, that's a team that certainly can go out there and contend with anybody at that point, in my opinion. And that the benefit of building this team up as you built it is that it's not going to necessarily be as reliant on needing a Mahomes or an Allen. Great to have them. Awesome if you can find one. But not necessary if you build up the right supplemental cast around that starting quarterback. Yalin said Harbaugh said he wished he could be in the elevator, but he just missed it. He's in the whole elevator ride, got the whistle in his mouth, looking at Herbert, waiting for some leadership to come forward. AI says Harbaugh is a weirdo. He doesn't eat chickens because they are nervous birds. He thinks it's transferred via consumption. Yes. Very strange one. I remember that story coming out too, AI, because he is a big guy on cows, right? So you start thinking about it like, well, aren't cows real placid and submissive almost? You know, if you're eating steak every day, doesn't that then make you all, if it's all transferable, doesn't that make you all placid and submissive then for your players? You don't want that either. If I got to choose between nervous and on edge or placid and gentle, and I'm going to probably go nervous, right? AI? We're really getting down to the transference thing being a real thing. AI says the Ravens with Derrick Henry might be scary. That could work. I will say in recent NFL history, when you do go for the back that's at this place in the career where Henry's at, and you're bringing him in to be this guy and the way they're hoping he can be, which is a real... And he's been running good still, so he hasn't had that drop-off yet. I'll give him credit on that, and no doubt he's this whole offseason been working his butt off, but to be a focal point a bit, to draw away the energy away, a little bit of the attention away from Lamar so he can do more of what he wants to do. We'll see on that. We'll see on that. It definitely, if he can be close to vintage Derrick Henry, if he could be 94% of Derrick Henry, prime Derrick Henry, 93%, then I think he can definitely be very effective there for them. But with the rebuild offensive line and the fact that Henry is a kind of guy as a back that is a little bit reliant on needing some holes opened up so he can get up to speed. He doesn't like that early penetration in the backfield. Of course, you run a lot of read option out of the shotgun with Derrick, you're going to hold a lot of offensive linemen in place. A fart in your general direction. I got a little French in me, Huey. A little French in me come out every once in a while. Huey says Ravens continue to not run the ball when it matters most. They never learn to lean into it. Until they do, they come up short. Yeah, a bit. I mean, some of what the Chiefs were doing last year with them was stacking a lot of those boxes and running a lot of, we're going to force you to throw the 9 on the backside. We're going to force Lamar to hit us deep down the field with an accurate pass. And he had about 4 passes in that game, 5 passes in that game. That was kind of the difference between he hits those or not, and that's the win or not there. I mean, he almost needed to just hit one of those, I think, in that game, and it might have made a huge difference. Jeffrey says, I don't know much Henry's going to have later in the season, but it's going to be fire early season, I feel. It could be. It could be. I'm just a little reticent with it because so much of what Lamar's done with the running game is to do it out of shotgun, where you want Lamar in shotgun so you can run a lot of the RPO stuff. And when you watch Derrick Henry, he's more of a guy where you want the quarterback under center and then allowing him to already start to get himself up to speed. Because the thing with Henry is that he's a monster when he's at full speed. You have Henry at that full gait and going, I mean, good luck trying to get him down. But if you can get to him before he gets the wheels up and rolling, that's where the issues can come into play. And the thing with doing the shotgun read option stuff, the running backs will often reference this, where those guys that need a little bit of the extra couple steps to get up to speed now, they're sort of starting from scratch here off of a read option look, and you're not necessarily able to hit that hole at the same sort of timing point that you could under center. And maybe that's where my question comes in a little bit between that dynamic between Lamar and him. I think it will work and be successful, but will be dominant, will be a difference-making kind of angle of things. I wonder a bit because I think they're going to end up having to modify a bit of that offense with Lamar doing a little bit more of the under center stuff, and we'll see how comfortable he is with doing that with it. But he is definitely a much better back than they've had there recently, especially with the fact that the kid that they took out of Ohio State never could quite get over his injury stuff. Yalin, thank you for the $5 donation, Yalin. I appreciate you for that. He says, which player or matchup are you most excited to see game day? Mine's DK versus Surtain. I think I'd be apt to want to steal yours, but I don't want to do that on a don't know. Because you know that Surtain's going to travel with DK. And as he did last time. And DK last time, I think, had 7 targets and 7 catches in that game. I think he only ended up with like 40 yards receiving, but that was also the first game of the season. And much like this game, these teams will play things a little close to the vest in that opening week. So, a little bit of shorter completions, not as much of trying to throw, deep balls and whatnot. That's going to be a real fun one, man. It's hard to not, be a little bit driven to go into that pick of things. I think, though, on the other side of it, we're also going to be having Cortland Sutton, probably seeing Tariq Woolen traveling with him. Cortland is a guy that's not going to end up, I don't think, very often out of the slot with this Broncos team, that he's going to be an X or a Z, and that's going to make it easier for, I think, Woolen to travel with him. And this is the first unveiling we're going to get of Woolen here, Yallen, traveling with the receiver. We've never seen this before here with him. And so it'll be kind of fun to see how that works, and if that is a good fit for Woolen and what he does, if there's more man-based principles running on the back of it with that, which I would reckon to guess that's going to probably be the case. Are we going to see some more stack boxes and blitzes within that as well? Because you can trust Woolen in that man coverage mold. It kind of all will go together for me defensively and how they play Denver, because I would think ideally against the Knicks, if you're going to run generally a lot of stack boxes in general terms, no matter the opponent, I would think against this Bronco team, you'd run even more of those stack boxes in this situation, being that you really want every snap as much as possible to be trying to confuse and make nervous this young rookie quarterback in his first start. And nothing's going to make a young rookie quarterback piss his pants like having stack boxes facing him down the barrel every time he's standing under center. So if that's the case, much more of the reliance then is going to go then to the outside of those guys holding up out there if they're in man and if they're pressed man. And that becomes Sutton and Woolen. And I believe that Woolen did pretty good on Sutton last time they played. He had the one maybe deep defensive pass interference, I think, on one throw, but he had a couple other ones as the game went on where he was getting better and better. And that was his first start, I think, as an NFL player, if I'm not mistaken, being Woolen's. So that'll be the other one. But Yallen, you pick a great matchup there as well. Also, as a third one to keep an eye on, because it's going to be a hell of a fight inside when these two guys go at it, is if you're looking to ever want to kind of your eyes drawn on an offensive line in the game to a matchup between offensive linemen and defensive linemen, watch Quinn Miners going up against Byron Murphy. Two very physical, we'll get after it, we'll fist fight, we're gonna battle. That's going to be a hell of a fight in there between those two guys when they're going mano-a-mano out there, as Miners has developed into a really good guard and he can be a real road grader, real kind of nasty kind of lineman in there on the inside for the Broncos. But I like yours too, Yallen. I do like yours too, man. Thistle, Jeffrey, thank you for another $2 dono. And Jeffrey, Yallen, you guys are very kind, man. Thank you for all the donations. Taker 610, you as well on that side of it. Says, my favorite matchup for Denver is Spoon against everyone. Now, Spoon unleashed. We're going to take the spoon out of the drawer. We're going to set it on top of the table, and we're not even putting a napkin down. And I'm very hyped for this as well. What is the plan for Spoon? He was even asked about it recently in a press conference a couple weeks ago, and he's just kind of was still being a little bit elusive with his answers, and McDonald has been that way with him as well. You're just going to have to kind of see, and is it going to be the Kyle Hamilton role? Is it going to be something else more different? Is there going to be some safety snaps in there with him? Hard to say. I think that Mike Macdonald has a toy that he really wants to use to the utmost, and it's the kind of toy that he sort of dreams about having in his defensive secondary. It's a bit of, as I've said, yeah, certainly if he was a little bit, maybe you can make it larger, but if we're just talking about Madden creator outside of just making the guy uber super monstrous size, but just everything else attribute wise that Mike Macdonald could want from a player that he puts into a secondary, Witherspoon's got it. And you're going to see this guy all over the field, I think, in this upcoming game. And as you're running these stacked boxes, here's one of the pieces that you can move around that stacked box. And he's just everywhere kind of flowing around, being a problem inside there and blitzing, working in coverage, sometimes working out on the edge off coverage, like I said, maybe even sometimes being aligned out there in safety or driving to sort of the single high safety roll post snap. So many different things this defense does that's so very creative in its flow. But yeah, Spoon's another guy that's going to be worth the price of admission just watching him alone on a field, watching him work. That guy gets after it. Thank you. Appreciate it. Brian Judge says, oof, Brando, rabbit ears. That's 90 tech, bro. I'm an 80s baby myself, so I'm right there with you. Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes that stuff still can kind of work, you know. You got to do what you got to do in this day and age, you know. It's a rough economy. It's tough out there. Timmy says, Hawksnest, listening to Dotson somehow got me more hyped than I already was. He sounded so excited to play for McDonald and had lofty things to say about him. Max sounds like such a good coach. Part of a couple of clips I ran at the top of the show today, Stimpy, was a few cut-ups of some of the players talking about McDonald, and much like Dotson talked about him today, they've uniformly, to a man, spoken about this guy in the same way. And I don't think that the Seahawks PR staff is saying, hey, remember in this interview to mention how smart McDonald is? Remember to mention how smart he doesn't even know how smart he is? Remember to mention, you know, they're just offering it up. And I think they're offering it up because this is what they're seeing behind the scenes and what they're feeling from him. And that you can't fake the players out, and that they're loving what they're seeing from this new head coach, understanding he's going to provide them advantages. His big brain is going to put them in positions to succeed. It's going to make that easier for them to be in that position to go make that play. And why wouldn't players love that? Why wouldn't players note that when they see it? Because that's a big advantage in your back pocket, especially if you're coming on the other side of it where that wasn't as much of an advantage in your back pocket in recent seasons. And the Tyrese Knight thing was cool too there, Stimpy. Yeah. Very encouraged by what we got from Tyrese in the future here. Derek, the Seahawks and Lightning fan. I've had this stream open the whole time. I've been doing my homework. Thank you for entertaining me. Laughing out loud. My pleasure, Derek. It's what I live to do here. Happy to do so. Hope the homework's going well. And Josie, Mike McDonald, definitely one of the, if not the story in training camp, one of the stories in training camp. And these guys certainly seem, we're going to learn on Sundays with it. You know, you'll feel it in the energy. You'll feel how fast they're running around the ball. You'll feel it, how guys are in on the details. You'll feel it by the willingness to get in there and tackle. You'll feel it by how they rally to the football. You'll feel it in the spirit of the team. Much like we felt in the spirit of the team last year when it wasn't there. When we said, this is something's missing here. Something seems to be empty and off. I think we're going to have a little bit of a different feeling this year when it gets to it. Kevin O'Connell says, don't worry, they'll see us at the Super Bowl. J.A. Stanger says, do you think this will be the last year Lockett will be around? I do. I think that Lockett, 10 years is a good round number to finish up on. I think he's already gotten his post-career situation settled and put together. And he's had a hell of a career. He's had his share of injuries along the way. And I think, you know, that outside of maybe the team being in a position of wanting to go for a Super Bowl next year and they want to bring him back in the fold and he's willing to come back for something like that, I think that it would take a lot like that to get him out of it from this year. It just feels like this is kind of the way that this is all set up, even from where they put the contract out to how they can kind of make this work moving into the future. So, yeah, I think this will be the last year of Lockett being around. And but who knows? Who knows too? Maybe he hasn't necessarily indicated this, so this is certainly a bit of a guess on my part, a big guess on my part. Orgy, the good thing about Grubb's offense is the tight ends don't need to hold their block like offensive linemen. It's more like chip and move on. The most you get is a hook and drive, but that's angles. Great point, War Chief. Great point. Yeah, there's a lot of blocks within this scheme that are more about kind of positional blocking, sort of pin and pull, right, War Chief, where you're able to just kind of use a guy's positioning against him and where he's aligned. Yeah, a little bit more of that within this. AI says Super Bowl quarterback Phil Simms loves Geno. Google interview with his son talking about Geno. Ooh, I'll check him out, AI. Easy to see why Phil would kind of resonate on this one, being that, you know, Phil was a guy that took that Giants team to the playoffs. You had a defensive mastermind out there with a Bill Belichick as your DC and Bill Parcells. You had a team with the Giants there that wasn't necessarily super talented offensively. They were fine. They're going to run the ball. They're going to lean on their quarterback. But Phil is one of those quarterbacks that you point to, including the guy that won after Phil and Jeff Hostetler there for the Giants a couple years later that you can point to and you can say, here's a guy that was not necessarily a game-changing quarterback of his era. He was good. He was fine. But he was not a superhero quarterback. He's not a game-changer quarterback. But there are many of these guys scattered in here throughout NFL history that win these Super Bowls. And yeah, we want those superhero guys, but there are these other guys that can win it too. And I think that Geno is that same kind of guy where that Phil sees the same kind of thing. We're like, yeah, he can make all the throws. He's really advanced in what he's done in his play, and he understands how to play the position. Get him the right supporting cast. Why can't this guy go get it done? I'll go check that out, though. Thank you for the suggestion. Wargees Brandon, are we at the Hawks Nest doing the wolf beards? I can grow mine with my handlebar mustache back in 2 weeks. Give me the word. I'm all in. Let's vibe together. Go Hawks. I don't know. I'll have to see how patient I can be with holding up this thing. I like it right now, but I'm sure I'm going to wake up probably one day and be like, just shave it off. You look ridiculous. Feels good right now, though. So I give it a flow. I do think eventually this season I'm gonna go clean shaven. I'm gonna try to do a couple of Mike Macdonald sketches. You know, it's Mike's so he's so kind of subtle with it. Take a little bit more over the top, maybe. Have some fun with that. But you want to do it? Let's go. Ewing says, agreed, the Chiefs were trying to force Lamar to pass. He should have run the ball himself much more. It's almost like he's trying to prove more that he's more than a running quarterback. I think there's definitely something to that. Certainly a trend, Ewing, that we tend to see with so many of these running quarterbacks that they end up going to as an evolutionary process in their game. Like you eventually reach that stage about year 5, 6 where you're like, okay, now I'm going to show everybody that I'm just this, instead of it's like, no, riding on the horse that brought you there. Even last year, Ewing, in a year where I think that Lamar did a lot to advance himself as a passer. And more of it was on the intermediate passing game, and the Chiefs were pushing him on the deep stuff. They were really forcing him into that box in that game in particular. But he got really good about being better in his progression reading and better at going through actual progressions and being able to hit the intermediate throws, not just short check down, but intermediate throws, truly. But in that game, yeah, he decided not going to run. You still ran for 800 yards last year from Lamar's perspective. And in a playoff game especially, you've got to use that stuff. Where you can find plays and ways to kind of force a conversion and whatnot, do it. And that is one of the parts where if Chiefs are going to blitz them like they're going to blitz, and you are a mobile quarterback, one of the places that you can tend to make those teams pay the price on that blitz is by breaking that pocket. Get outside the pocket and then go upfield. And once you do, there isn't a lot of extra defenders on the back end to deal with you. And it's not like if they're blitzing you, they can run a spy on you in addition to it. You can't run a 7-man blitz and then run an 8th spy on the back. So, to your point. DVD says, Derrick Henry's the exact reason why I took Mark Andrews in the 3rd round. Just think about the goal line RPO with Andrews releasing off the block. Well, Lamar definitely loves him, Mark Andrews, and that's a security blanket guy for him. He's going to go to him a lot. And he likes the big, huge catch radius that Andrews brings, which certainly, to your point, only helps at the goal line when you're throwing up that ball like 11 feet in the air and my man's just extending his 35-inch long arms and going up and getting it. But, yeah, I could see that. They're going to be hard to stop the goal line. That's for sure. I wouldn't want to deal with that. Glad we're in the NFC at times, man. Yallin says, Brandon, I predict 2 interceptions. Who do you predict gets them? Spoon, Woolen, or Love? I would probably say Spoon if we're talking about this upcoming game, because if you're causing interceptions, you're probably causing it because you've confused Bo Nix. I think he's going to be very much instructed in this game of sort of one read and run, one read and throw it away. So you're going to have to confuse him off maybe that read he wants to go to. And I think a lot of the reads he's going to want to go to is into that sort of check down place or into that sort of hot route off the blitz. And that's especially in those moments where you can kind of fake the blitz and trick him. So that would be the guy that I'd probably go to in this game. I don't know if Woolen would get enough targets out there with Sutton if he's traveling around with him. We'd see with that. So Spoon would be my guy on that one. Fortune says, Brandon, to your point, Henry needing to pick up speed, I was watching a show with a coach talking about how they dealt with Ironhead. He said he used to blitz his middle linebacker at him to stop him early. It makes a lot of sense. And I love Henry as a back, and he's maybe one of the backs of his generation here when we look at it in retrospect. But something that helped him there with the Titans, when you look at that Titan offensive line when he was at his best, that was a line that was opening initial holes up for them. Now, an initial hole will go get you 5-6 yards. And the beauty about Henry is you go get him a 5-6 yard run and he can go house that run. He can go stick the linebacker and put him on his face. He's going to stiff arm the cornerback to the sideline, and then he's going to go run that thing to the house. So he had that ability to then maximize that hole you give him, whereas other running backs might take that 5-yard hole that line gives them, and then they get 6 yards, 7 yards. But then there are those backs too that there's penetration in the backfield. They can dance around them. They can then open up full throttle, hit the edge, turn what would be a negative 2-yard play into a 9-10 yard gain, 15-yard run. A la kind of a Kenneth Walker type. There's all different backs. They're all different types of flavors, but there is different ways to stop different backs. And with Henry, he needs that blocking. And if he doesn't have that blocking, he gets that penetration, and you can get even merely just kind of a hand sort of slowing him down, not able to get back up to speed. He's not going to have that injection to then be kind of slowed down a little bit to then click it back into place. Everything has to hit with the right timing with him on those holes. And if it does, he maximizes it. That's my thing with it. He will, but if he can't, he's not quite, I think, as effective as a running back. Derek says, I'm extremely excited to see how different the defense looks and behaves than they did in our boring off-coverage zone defense last few years. It's going to be night and day difference, Derek. Night and day difference this year and what you're going to see from this defense. It might shock the system a little bit when you see how kind of wild and new and awesome it looks. Or Jesus Brandon, I'm okay. Okay, I'm all in. I think one of our middle linebackers gets the first pick of the game. Let's go. Derek says, I've never understood the Bo Nix hype. I watched him literally god-awful at Auburn for years as an SEC fan, and then he has a good year in the defensively weak Pac-12, and everyone loves him. Well, he had 2 years, so he did back-to-back outstanding seasons there at Oregon, and I think that he had to go to the right team here to be successful, Derek. I do. I think he's gone to the right team. He's not a multi-processor quarterback. He's not an improviser, in my opinion. He'll improvise to run, but he's not an improviser really as much to throw. He was a little bit better about that in preseason, but he's a guy that's got an NFL skill set. He's got NFL plus mobility. I would argue that he's probably just a smidge above average on the arm strength, but it is a little bit above average. So he can make pretty much every throw in the book just about. And the 2 years of production he's had at Oregon, I think, has got to weigh in a little bit more than the early production at Auburn because of the fact that that's the growth that you would hope to see from a young player. It's a bit of that, like we talk about with these guys. And I mean, this is, I would say right now, in my opinion right now, Derek, this is one of the more hotter topics of discussion right now because I don't think that there's a certain answer we've come to on it. But one of the bigger points of discussion here right now is quarterbacks. And maybe it's one worth kind of doing a whole show a little bit around this because there does seem to be such varied opinion on this. In that I get the sense sometimes where people will say, well, this guy at 19 years old is the quarterback that he's going to be. This guy at 23 years old is the quarterback he's going to be. This guy at 27 years old is going to be the quarterback he's going to be. Or is it even this guy at 33 years old, having 10 years of starting experience in the NFL, is going to be the best quarterback, is ultimately the top end side you'll see of that player. And I think that this is a good point of discussion, and there's a lot of varied opinions on it. But from my standpoint on it, Derek, I look at these quarterbacks as quarterbacks that get incrementally better over time. And if I see a quarterback that throughout his college career incrementally gets better over time, I'm going to then take that as a little bit of that's an encouraging point for him in the NFL then. And you got a guy with 55 starts at the college level here, and Nick's coming to the Broncos. Something else that you tend to want to see from these quarterbacks is a lot of starting experience, so you don't have the one-year wonders. And I'll give you that wasn't good at Auburn. The one thing I'll say about Auburn is Auburn's produced one quarterback at the NFL level here over about the last 30 years in the SEC, being Cam Newton. And that was as much because of what he could do as a runner than it was as what he could do as a passer. They're not all that good at necessarily developing QBs. And could that maybe be a bit of the factor here at play in regards to Nick's on this as well? Could be, I think. But it's really for me as much of he went to the exact ideal landing spot, Derek. He's not a multi-processor kind of quarterback. Most teams would want that to be a thing that grows with that quarterback with them in time. Peyton doesn't need that as much because Peyton's going to script really good stuff for him on the first read. Hit the post route up the field after you look off the safety to the left. I will have schemed this up on the prior 2 plays by drawing the safety over here. Just trust the post route will be open and throw it. First read right there. Gotcha, coach. I can do that. And so he really fit to the right guy, in my opinion, on that side of it. That's part of why I like this fit there, Derek. It could be different if you have a guy like Nick's going to, let's say, the Raiders on the other end of it. But you're not alone. There's a lot of people that are not believers in Bo Nix and in him being worthy of being picked as high as he was selected. MJ Seahawk, thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate you for that, MJ Seahawk. He says, it will be weird not seeing Pete on the sideline chewing gum. I'm so pumped for Mike to lead this team. Indeed, it's many years, 14 long years, Pete, walking up and down those sidelines as this head coach, an institution in himself. And big shoes to fill for Mike coming in. Big shoes for Mike to fill. But I think that part of what's going to help this transition process is I think people are going to be able to see the reason for this move, what Mike brings to the table, and how this then benefits the team both in the short term and the long term, and allowing us to rise back to a potential contending state. But it will be a little bit of, there's always going to be a little bit of the melancholy there too, as the old coach does move on and he's not down there as he's been for so many years, MJ Seahawk, to your point. But the excitement's there and it's palpable right now for this team, and especially even from just the players and the press conferences and talking about McDonald, MJ. They're hyped. Boy says, I don't know. I know way too early, but would do disgusting things to have the Hawks draft Cam Ward next year to sit behind Geno. Hey, Cam Ward had a hell of an opening show there with the Miami Hurricanes. Very impressive. Very, very impressive opening week there with him, as he made some great throws and great decisions, and the ball placement and the timing of the throws was top-notch. Part of why he's one of my favored quarterbacks coming into this year, even with what he did. I loved him at Washington State. I wished he had come out last year so we could have taken him in the third round. It would have been a great pick. But he's trying to elevate himself into sort of first-round status. I don't know if he's going to have the measurables enough to get there, but as a guy that's would have been a third-round guy last year who might be able to push himself into high second-round status potentially, he might just be able to do it if he continues to ball out like that. Gibby says, Hawks Nest, there will still be growing pains, but when do you think the defense will perfect this scheme? Probably pretty deep into the season, I would say, because you're going from the most simplified to the most complicated. If you're already going from complication to more complication, that might be one jump, but you're jumping from one end of the scale to the next. And if you're going to make that kind of transition, I would think that when we talk about perfecting, doesn't mean it can't still be really beneficial and ultimately that it even allows you to be a contender as you're trying to iron out these kinks, Stimpy. So it doesn't mean that just that's necessarily indicative of a team that then can't still be really good defensively. But to perfect it, I think it's going to take a little bit of time because you are going from one end to the other there. Ryan Ball says, I don't think Geno has ever been the reason for any of the losses the last 2 years. I can't think of too many that I can necessarily stick at his porch. Amazon delivery. I can't think of too many. As you go through most of the losses, you can kind of point back to it's a bit like the Cowboys game last year where the defense just falls on its face. Raiders game a couple years ago where you just couldn't stop the run in Jacobs. The Carolina Panthers game a couple years ago where you just couldn't stop Donta Foreman in the running game of the Panthers. And I think you might be hard-pressed to find one where you really can put it squarely up on his shoulders. And if you could find one, you'd really only find one at that, Ryan. Right? Randall McDaniel, thank you for the $2 donation. I appreciate you for that. Randall, it's great to see you in the house. We win the coin toss, receive or defer to second half. I would think as a coach, my opinion on this is that you defer on the opening kick. That's my opinion. Get the ball back in the second half. So when you have that ball, you're better instructed of where you're at as far as the game goes and the flow of the game and what you need to do. I'm a big fan of defer to second half. And I think that's the general way most coaches go about it, Randall. But I haven't heard on McDonald how he intends to do that. I like the thought, though, of just going right out, get the defense out there, use that crowd that's hyped up at the beginning of the game, and try to get that quick early stop, and then you get that ball back. Try to steal that possession, especially where you can steal that possession at the end of half. And find a way to sort of, if you can kind of sit on the ball to finish up half and then get the ball back at halftime. Boy, that's the real ideal, isn't it? Chris Smoke Hot Neslin, thank you for becoming a member of the channel, Chris. For the members of the channel, please do keep an eye on your community posts. We will be doing a monthly call-in show here on the Hawks Nest. I'll also be posting up PFF scores on Monday. So the very next day after the game, I will be posting up on the community the offense, the defense, and the special teams grades for your members of the channel. So do keep an eye on your community post for that. But thank you, Chris, for becoming a member. I really do appreciate you for that. Brendan Myers, thank you for subscribing, Brendan. I really appreciate you for doing that as well. Folks, do me the favor here and hit that like button if you could for me. It's a big deal. Helps out this channel and the growth and getting us where we're trying to go and all of that good stuff. So please do hit that like button. I would really, really appreciate it on that side of it. But thank you, Brandon, for joining on up as well. Yalin, thank you for the $2 donation. As Gino's weakness was pocket awareness, now a strength. Indeed, I think that there's been some work here with especially the subtle pocket movement, as I like to call it. You know, getting yourself a couple steps here, a couple steps there, climbing the pocket. It could be something as much as, JT O'Sullivan was noting the DK Metcalf touchdown in the back of the end zone on the little fade ball there, right? That sort of completed the Geno process in his only preseason action, in his only drive of the preseason. And the funny part, you can see JT kind of acknowledging a little bit there, and JT being a guy that was a backup quarterback who maybe didn't have kind of the most natural of upper end skill set. And JT's noting on the throw there where he goes, the one thing you can kind of nitpick here with Geno is he's a little bit off his back foot throwing this to DK, as opposed to being a little bit more on the front foot and really, letting it rip through fully. And then he sort of remarks a little bit of how, but when you got the ability to sort of torque like Geno does, it really doesn't matter. And he's also kind of giving himself a little bit of extra time to make the throw. He's taking sort of a soft step back away from the pressure. It's not that he's bailing back from the pressure, like, retreating. It's just this soft little step back as opposed to pushing yourself forward on the throw. And JT's not acknowledging kind of both of these two things in tandem with it, that just shows some of that advanced expertise Geno has for the position and how he's making that throw. Understanding I can't throw into this at this point. I got the torque. I got the touch. I don't need to put the velocity here. This is a ball placement throw to put it up to where DK can go high point it. So it's more about putting it into a given position here. And just a perfect throw in a lot of ways at that and where he put that ball. Now, the defender fell down, of course, but interesting to hear JT note that. And I think that's some of that growth you see from him through these years with him in that pocket awareness. You saw it earlier in that one drive as well, where he was able to dip away from pressure on the play action, a play where I think a lot of quarterbacks get sacked or at the very least throw an incompletion, and he was still able to find his check down. Seahawks Gaming says K9's like Henry, just give him the 5-yard hold and he can house it. Oh yeah, he's got that same kind of, does it in a different fashion, but more with the speed and the acceleration. But he absolutely can be a guy that we saw in that first year with a couple of the runs he had that actually give him a hole and he'll be gone. Nicholas says, people hate me for this, but I prefer Charbonnet McIntosh over K9. Oof, that'd be a tough sell for me on that, Nicholas. I like both those guys quite a bit. I do. But I think K9's got some special components to him. Good news is they're all good, though. That's the best part about it. Ricardo says, I have DK in fantasy. Has he played Surtain before? Do we think practice squad limits him significantly? Oh, Patrick Surtain limits him in practice squad. That's how I see Ricardo. I see PS. I go practice squad. So Patrick Surtain. Last time these two teams played, Patrick Surtain was following DK Metcalf. Believe in that game. DK Metcalf came out of that game with, and give me some room on this, it was 7 targets, 7 catches, and like 45 yards receiving. But the Seahawks in that game as well had it to where the defense kind of allowed Broncos to kind of live with the ball in the second half. It's kind of a game where you ran the ball a good amount too. So the clock was kind of getting bled pretty quickly in that one as an opening game week. But technically, 7 targets, 7 catches. He had one that you can see on the thumbnail that I provided there where Surtain's right there on him and DK reaches out and catches the ball out away from his body and pulls in the reception. But he didn't hit him for anything deep. Michael Myers is coming from Denver with a diehard Donkey fan. We can't lose. That'd be a long trip back to Denver, Michael. Have fun, man. Derek, the Seahawks and Lightning fan. As a Gators fan, Ward was great in that second half, but I'd like to see a little more against tough competition because our team has given up after that last-minute touchdown drive before half, and our coach needs to be cut. It's getting dark out there with Florida. Brutal moment, too, there, Derek, where the Hurricanes were walking off the field and you had all the recruits in the house. And all the players are walking off telling them all to come to Miami. You're going, oh. Riddle. Not the look you intended when you set those recruiting visits up, I'm guessing. Yeah, I said that Mike Terrell's going to be a steal. He has unbelievable feet, high level. Remember it. I will remember you said, man. I love it. I hope you're right. Warchiefs B, MLB with first, middle linebacker with the first interception is Math. Rook quarterbacks, 70%. To throw short, 30% deep balls. Add good defensive backs to 75% chance he goes away from the defensive back zones. Hooks, flats. 15-yard curls are out. All left is box throws, middle linebacker INTs. Could be. I like your logic on it, man. It's a little bit of what was driving me towards going for Witherspoon because he's kind of operating in there like a bit of a linebacker at times, War Chief. Like you're going to have him playing like a kind of like a Sam at times, maybe even like a Will here and there. So, I mean, that's where I was kind of thinking of with Witherspoon is that you'd kind of catch Nick's thinking Witherspoon's going to play it like a slot, but then he plays it like a linebacker. But we're both arriving at basically the same place, is that probably in the middle of the field's where the interception's happening and short to intermediate throw. Brian says, Brandon, when was the last time you were excited to see the defensive line in real game? I juiced thinking about how these guys are going to terrorize quarterbacks and running backs. Well, it's probably been since like 15, 16-ish for me, when we started to get a little bit of the line getting pecked away bit by bit by bit, and the effectiveness of the line just started to, through the years, pitter off bit by bit by bit by bit. It's been really about having really one guy or something on the line that you've really locked into over the past couple of years. I mean, last year it was sort of Uchenna Nwosu. That was the guy that you were just kind of, your eyes were drawn to. Leonard Williams a little bit when he then came along a little bit later on. But it's always been, you know, one year it was a Jadeveon Clowney that you're kind of watching a little bit closely and like, ooh, let's see what he can kind of do. So it's been more about a singular guy thing than it's been about the collective. Now it's more about the collective. And this is truly the first time in many years that we've had something that is this strong from the start to the finish, this deep, this wide. Brendan, you're awesome, man. Thank you for that. I salute you too, sir. Brandon McDaniel, thank you for another $5 donation. I'm very kind of you, brother. Very kind as always. Think about how Mac will game plan a rookie quarterback versus how the old regime would. Pete would just let the D get picked apart. Mac is going to bring the heat. I agree with you there. I think what Pete would have done is he would have said, let's force this quarterback to throw short all day. Let's force him to throw short and accurate. Let's force him to, you know, hit these throws accurately and on time. And eventually he's going to make a mistake. And this defense, I think, is going to be more about let's force the mistake. The last defense, to your point on this round, is more about the mistake will happen at one point or another. You give this quarterback 30 throws over the game. Pete would have tried to work to stop the run and just force them into the passing attack, but then it would have been protecting deep and then allowing some of the short stuff, which in my opinion, and back to your point on this, Randall, would have just worked right into Sean Payton's wheelhouse for what he wants to do. He's perfectly fine letting his rookie quarterback take these easy throws over the course of the game because now you're allowing Payton to have the easily scripted throws for his rookie quarterback. What we want to do instead is remove those off the table. You want to force Nix into having to make high-level throws and high-level reads and have to process post-snap. And so that, you're absolutely right. It would have been the quantifiably different in just about every way outside of both of these two defenses are going to have an onus put upon stopping the run against this Bronco team first and foremost. That part would have been the same. But how they would have approached the secondary coverages, stack boxes, blitzes, what they're trying to protect against would have been, I think, remarkably different. Thank you, Randall. I appreciate you for that, man. Also, another $2 donation. Another one as well, man. Thank you. Would love to see winning percentage of teams who defer kickoff. Let's see. I don't know if we got it. Now let's see if there's something in there. Oh, shoot. Oh, shoot. All right, Randall, here we go. This is from 2011, so I don't know if this is going to be as pertinent with the data we've got right now, but ESPN Stats and Information just released a trend review of offense, and it backs up what I always believe. The NFL continues to evolve. I'm not a big fan of the beginning of the game. The surprising note is that deferred kickoffs really reasonably frequent. Coaches deferred 77 to 256 coin tosses, a stunning 3%. Obviously not debating deferring kickoffs when weather conditions bad. Definitely could be a smart thing. Well, I thought this was here, but I don't know if he just buried the lead or what he did, Randall. It's weird when you see this. It looks like 55.8% of the time that teams deferred, they won on this, Randall. But this is, again, from a little bit further back, and there doesn't seem to be anything readily available as far as what I can see just doing kind of a Google search on this. So would be interesting if there was some data out there, and with all of the advanced data out there, I would have thought if I Google searched something, you would have saw. But most of the stuff I'm seeing here seems to be from 2010 years back, Randall. I don't see anything here that's got anything real data-wise. So, sorry, man. Not sure. Not too sure. Angry AB, how long do we have to wait to get Burrow? Get him out of the death trap of an organization. They just signed that new deal with him, man. So, if I was to say there's any likelihood of any player out in the league right now of a possibility coming to Seattle that is one of those quarterbacks that's one of the few special ones, if you want to put up in that area, you got a Mahomes, a Josh Allen, a Burrow, a Lamar Jackson. I'm trying to think of who else maybe we could kind of put up into that range of things here. Like I'm spacing out here on this one. Anyway, we'd all agree their hand grenade, there's like 5-6 guys, right? Burrow, one of those guys. So if you're talking about one of those guys that's going to be a likely guy or a possible guy to come to Seattle, and I'm not saying it's a likely or a possibility, I'm just saying of those guys, the one that would be most possible or the one you really probably want to set your potential sights on, I'd say to look at would be more of a Josh Allen and not a Burrow. But I'd take either of them, man. That's for sure. I'll take either of them. Brandon Meyer says JT's video was really complimentary of Geno. It was. It really was, Brandon. Good stuff from Sullivan. And he always does good stuff. I love his perspective, former NFL quarterback talk, and he's always got extra details in there that you wouldn't typically always get. And he was very, very, very complimentary of Geno. Absolutely. Yellen, this is the coach's matchup. Mac has a rookie quarterback to scheme pressure against, but Peyton will expect that and use the screen to the halfback as the answer. How susceptible do you think the defense is to the screen? Well, that certainly is the answer to providing pressure, is to throw the screenplay a little bit more so than, ever before. There is times that this can be problematic. I think that when it comes to the pressure matchup here, do I expect there to be a decent amount of blitzing with Knicks this upcoming week, y'all? And yeah, sure I do. I don't think that it's going to be that you're going to come out of the week 1 with a top 5 blitzing rate team. It's going to be probably right along the area of where we'll be at the end of the season, which is right around probably that 15th mark when it's all said and done. It's more of the stack boxes. And this is the beauty of the stack boxes, is part of the beauty of the stack boxes is the appearance of the blitz is always readily there right up into the snap and post snap. But then once you're dropping post snap, it can be anything. And if I am only then eventually bringing the 4 guys on the front post snap more often than not, I'm still left with all of the plenty guys on the back end then to deal with that screenplay. So last year against, the Seahawks, they weren't able to run a lot of the screen stuff. We weren't able to run a lot of screen stuff against Baltimore last year against the stack boxes they ran against us. So it is a way that you can counter it, but you need the team to actually be either doing one of two things. Either A, they're blitzing at a high rate and sending a lot of guys, and they have a lot of holes on the back end that you can attack on the screen, or you've got the front 4 with their pinning their ears back, just getting up the football field. And now there's open lanes, that you can kind of attack with that. Now you've got them running past the running back, and you can get up that way too. But this is the part of the beauty of the defense, is that you show stack boxes, you make them think it's a blitz, but it's not really a blitz. It sometimes will be. And there are those plays when you're bringing it, there's going to be some susceptibility at that point to then giving up a screen play. But even in how they rush the passer with their front 4, y'all, and it's a lot of compound pressure where it's a lot of the mush rush off the edge. And especially if against a mobile quarterback like Knicks, it's not going to be the Darrell Taylor guys flying out of their stance trying to run the edge. It's going to be a lot of guys pressing this down and the front 4 all working together in tandem in the pass rush they're generating, which again becomes to me a little bit less about just guys like last year against the Browns, y'all. And the Browns really took advantage of our front 4 and their willingness to want to pin the ears back and just get upfield. And so that's why the Browns, I think on one drive alone, hit us with like 3 screenplays and got right up the field on us in that game because we were just trying to get to the field too much. And there wasn't any games we're running up front. We were just telling our guys to get to the passer, get the pressure. We need to get the pressure. And so this is where there's some differences, I think, at times in our scheme and how we run it. So it's a little bit of a worry there. It is, I think, to a little bit of a degree. But more of what you're wanting to do here is disguise and confuse. Even beyond creating the simulated pressures, it's the disguise and confuse. Make Knicks think it's this, and then it becomes that. And make that occur as often as you can, play after play after play after play. Dick to Brandon, who gets the first sack of the season on Mike Macdonald's defense? The first sack of the year on Mike Macdonald's defense will come from Derek Hall. Mike McGlinchey is a guy that's a little undersized as an offensive lineman, and he's not a guy that likes those big, torqued up edges who've got a lot of power. Remember a couple of years ago in the Niner game that we played with Jadeveon Clowney here, remember how Clowney just completely beefed up on him and just took him out to the woodshed in that game because he just did not have the length or the power to deal with what Clowney was bringing with. And Hall does that, brings some of that, I think, a little bit to a lesser degree, in that you can put him out on that edge, and I think he can kind of manhandle McGlinchey a little bit off of that edge at times. So I think we'll get one of those manhandle sacks by Hall, where he'll throw McGlinchey around and then get his hands on Nix. But that'll be my first sack of the year. Derek Hall. Brian says, Brando, do you think there's a practice squad player who will make any significant contributions to the team this year? I think there's probably two players I would go to. Recent history has taught us, Brian, that we have to reach into our running back room pretty deep throughout the course of a season, and that even a fourth running back on your roster is going to have to find his way onto the football field and find a way to be some effective and productive for you, because your starters are going to get beat up a little bit, so especially in a 17-game season. So George Holani as your fourth running back, I think at some point or another gets onto the active roster, ends up getting some touches at some point in a game, just kind of a general feeling I have. I also think Marquise Blair is a guy to take a look at here. A guy coming back as a former second-round pick who had, I think, overall pretty solid training camp that when he was here, and that's why he did make it back onto the practice squad. Your safety position is not tremendously deep right now. Rashawn Jenkins has been working through his share of injuries on his side of it. You don't know if really Kobe Bryant's best position is as safety or maybe even as a more outside kind of corner, and where that part stands. You like what you got from Kayvon Wallace. But Marquise Blair, with his skill set, does fit really well to this defense in that he can play both free and strong safety. He's got that past history of it. And so maybe that would be the two players that I would go to. Randall, thank you for another $2 donation. Very kind of you, man, for all of your support to this channel. Does it feel like Pete started the trend of deferring kickoffs? Yeah, it might be, because you're right. For years, I think if you go back 80s and 90s, I think you could go pretty purely all the way down the line. And most coaches, if they got the kickoff, they wanted the kick. Give me the ball. Give me the ball. We'll take the ball. But Pete was heavy on the deferring side of it. I'm big on the deferring side too. I like it. To me, I think it's just in the better. It's you want to, when you get the ball later in the game, as you start out the game, you're not always instructed in the game to start out where the game's going to be at in that second half. And that gives you a chance to really understand what you've got to do on that drive. Do we got to get down here and score quick because we're down by 3 touchdowns? Do we have some time? Are we ahead in this game? And we need to start leaning in the run and start continuing to wear this defense down. I like the way it strategically, Randall, sets you up and informs you on how you do. Whereas if you just take the kick, you're kind of at the behest of the way the game plays out at that point. It sort of removes some of that later control, I feel like, from your grasp. I'd love to hear what you think on it, though. Joe Z says Mike McDonald's blitz rates are actually low. Middle of the road. I think he was 17th, 18th last year, but you're going to be right around middle of the road-ish, which is that perfect spot where it's not a team that at 32nd that never blitzes, and it's not that team at the Miami, Minnesota Vikings who are going to blitz every place. It's right at that spot where the threat is always readily there. You always got to be aware of it. You always got to have those protection checks in place, but that it's the appearance that it's always coming. Ran the cut, Big Cat will lead up 2 blockers, and Jaron Reed will come running right through. I was thinking Jaron Reed is my guy I was going to go to as well. That was another one I was thinking about too, Ran, because he had that sack in the preseason, and you know him and Williams are going to be cooking up some games inside. Some loops, some stunts, some twists, some turns, some spinaroos, some mollywops, some pim-poms, some rigs, some scattlebucks. What's up, Ethan? Good to see you, man. Misfits says, I think Misfits says, I think the Denver defensive line might be really tough versus the run. Boy, I don't know, man. Zach Allen, he can be pretty tough. DJ is getting up there. Their nose tackle, a little undersized there on the inside, and he's up there in age a little bit. I don't know. I think that's where we can maybe get after a little bit, especially as we spread them out a bit, Misfit. You know, get out those 4 wide receiver sets and then give Walker some space to run around out there. Brendan's got Boye. Monson's got Byron Murphy. All good, all great answers. All fantastic answers. Hall's looking good. I think he's about ready to go on this. I really do. You guys got great suggestions, though, for the first sack. I can't go wrong with any of those. Jan says, so many years of bad tackling to start the season. We'll be excited to see if this is no longer an issue. Yeah, you guys want to see how bad it was for me last year? You guys want to see just how bad it was for your guy last year on the old opening game of the season and that tackling and what it did to me? What it did to me. My brother said I shouldn't post this to the channel because it was too cheesy. But you know what? Now it does feel like feels like we've had enough time. Make sure my stuff turned off here. Hold on, folks. You guys might like this. I put this together last year. I didn't post this, but I put it together last year because I thought it'd be fun. Jeez, we'll lower this sucker down, shall we? Holy big photo, Batman. All right, here we go. Try to get the volume on this thing on. Okay. We gotta check this out. This was last year before the first game of the year last year. Opening game of the season. Seahawks, Rams. Here we go at home. We got this. Easy clap. Come on now. Oh. Ah. Ooh. Oh. Oh. No. No. Ah. Well, that wasn't so bad. All right, opening game of the season. So there you go. That was me last year. You saw it. It aged me by about 20 years, that first game. Brother said that's too cheesy. You can't put that on. Yalin says getting the kick in the second half is such an advantage, especially at home. High energy from the crowd puts the pressure on the visitor offense to score. You can make adjustments coming out of half. I love it. Yeah, that's same reason there. Yeah, what works on the offense works for the defense too. It can inform you of how you have to play defensively. Are we down this game? Do we got to start taking some risks? You know, and you're not as informed of that, I think, at the front of things. So yeah, I'm just always been in favor to it. If I ever did my Madden, I always deferred. This is laughing my ass off. That was great, B. Glad you guys liked. My brother's like, that's too cheesy. You're not putting that in the channel. I was like, all right, bro. I thought it was funny. Oh, but that was that first one, man. We were so hyped up for it last year, and just got kicked right in the gonads on that first game. God, it was tough. I think it added 3 decades, Nicholas. No lie. I think it had three decades. Maybe I'll release that one here before the season yet. You guys are digging it. Alcoholic in the house. How you doing, man? Good to see you, BP. What's up, man? I like it. BP says 8998. I like it, man. I can see it. I can absolutely see it. We'll go ahead and start, not necessarily put a full wrap up on this, but we'll kind of let's keep getting our last couple questions in. I got down the bottom of the chat on this one. We got tomorrow the B&B show here, and I got some things offline I'm working on as well. Did want to get you guys a few of my picks for the season. I promised you guys on that, and just want to put this in the note as well for you guys. There we go. I just want to put this in the note as well for you guys on, I've got a fantasy draft. I know it's going to be hard for certain folks on this to do because we just don't, I know in Washington, just the rules are what they are here. So it doesn't allow for you to be able to do, as much stuff as far as on the Underdog Fantasy app. As you guys know, I am sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. We'll be sponsored this upcoming year by them and continue to be so. So if you are able to use the app, if you are outside the state of Washington, or if you're in a casino in the state of Washington, you can use the app in full right now. You can get matched 2-to-1 on their on whatever you deposit there. So $100, get yourself an additional $50 back. I'm also putting down the link right now, a link to the Underdog Fantasy Football. We've got 3 in there of 10, so we need 7 more spots filled up. It's a $10 entrance fee to get in on this. But if you, again, do your old, do a $100 donation, get a $50 donation on the other side of it, you got that covered just on what they match you right there alone. We're going to be running this fantasy here right before the season. So if you are looking to get on a fantasy league late here, we're going to get this thing kicked off here probably by tomorrow. I'm going to probably just put it to like Reddit or whatever. If we don't get the slots filled up tonight, I'm just going to kind of throw it out to some randos on it on the other side of it. But if you want to join the league, I've got the link right there for Underdog Fantasy. Use my code today, which would be NEST. It's Nest, NEST when you go there, or you can click down the description section link below, and they will match you. Again, not at 100%, but it's at a 2-for-1 right now. So $200, $100, $1,000, $500, $2,000, $1,000. So nice little deal they have running there with Underdog. They've got the freebie bets going on this, kind of freebie picks, 0.5 for Kelsey, 0.5 yards. You can kind of start to put that together as kind of a parlay. And a few of my season bets this year on what I put down here for it. They gave me these little kind of credits on the account, so they let me kind of go out there and play around with these things. I've got Geno over for this upcoming game. Geno over 238 yards passing. DK over 61.5 yards for receiving. Josh Allen I paired this with, who I think will have more than 219 yards passing against the Cardinals. And Walker with more than 59 yards running for this upcoming game. Seasonal bets wise, I'm taking over on the CJ Stroud for 28.5 passing touchdowns. Geno over 22.5. Lawrence over 22.5. And then DK over 7.5 yards. 7.5 receiving touchdowns. So I'll click through a couple of these, guys. You can click it and take some screenshots if you want on a few of these. I posted a couple of these up. I'm definitely really liking their lines on this, though, where I think Lawrence is going to go well above 22.5. CJ Stroud, I think he's only going to build on what he did last year. I think they're going to take that division. This upcoming year as well, Quentin Johnson below 599 yards. I'm not liking what I'm seeing from him out of there at the Charger camp. Second-year receiver out of TCU. As you can see, there's some guys here with Seattle I'm very high on a couple of these, with Geno and Walker especially. Thielen in there I think is going to end up still being one of the main targets for Bryce Young when it's all said and done. So a couple of these things I'll just kind of flow through for you guys. Nothing major here. Saquon Barkley, higher than 300 yards receiving, as I put on my prediction thing here. I think he's your offensive player of the year this year, not MVP, but your offensive player of the year, kind of your McCaffrey this year with the Eagles. Mark Murphy, I've got him over 4.75 sacks. Knicks, I've got him higher than 16.5 passing touchdowns. I think that this won't be the week that happens a lot on, but I think throughout the course of the year, he averages at least a little bit more than 1 touchdown passing a game. Rome Odunze out there at with Chicago. Can't say the man's name right, but I do think he's going to get more than 4.5 receiving touchdowns with Chicago this year. And Brian Thomas with Trevor Lawrence, yes, over 800 yards receiving. I do believe it. So those are kind of some of my picks going down right now on that side of it. We'll go ahead and get kind of some of the last few questions on in here tonight, and then we'll kind of put a little bit of a wrap-up on it. Wednesday shows are going to tend to be right around this 2.5, 3 hour mark, as we got shows on Tuesday and then on Thursday too. So keeping them a little bit tighter today on that side of it. Jack Maloney says McDonald is going to see how those 12s roll. He's heard nothing yet. Good to hear that he's asked a few questions today about the communication side of it. This is one of my worries about, especially this upcoming week, where he goes, oh my God, it's this loud? It's like this? And so it sounds like they're getting out ahead of it. And they're doing everything they can to work and prep and make sure that they've got the hand signals ready to go and everything they can do to kind of deal with it, because it is going to be loud there this week. Brian Judge says, whatever happened to Nelson Caesar? I don't believe he's on an active roster right now, Brian. So still out there on the street. Not on the practice squad either. Jack says, I'm not American. I can't do it. I'm sorry, man. There are some restrictions at play there. I know it does make it a little bit tough. Nicholas, for all the Hawks fans out there, my wife and I will be watching the first game with my best friend at Tony V's Garage on Hewitt Avenue in Everett. I'd love to meet any of you. Let's go. Randall McDaniel, thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate you for that, Randall. I saw the injury report came out today and looked good. We expect Draymond Jones to play. Assume Nwosu will be out. You rather we signed Zach Allen over Draymond Jones? No, I think that they're kind of similar at the end of the day in what they bring to the table. There's more similarity, maybe not similar in players, Randall, but similarity in ultimately what they bring in production is kind of the same. They're being paid at right about the same. And you remember with that too, Randall, it wasn't really a matter of Draymond Jones or Zach Allen. It was that you looked to go sign Zach Allen after you signed Draymond Jones, that they wanted to sign both of those two guys. So they're really close to it, but I'm okay with going the Draymond Jones signing instead. He was a little bit more, you knew what you were getting with him. With Zach, it was a little bit more about projecting where he was going. As far as the injury reports go, everything looks good. I mean, it looks as positive as I think that we could hope it to look. It would seem that Pharaoh Brown's going to play with that dodgy foot he had suffered with the Tennessee practices. It looks like Draymond Jones with the hamstring injury he suffered when I was there on the 27th of July is going to be back. And as we've talked about with Randall, that tracks correctly where you hamstring injury, this would be about the timeline you'd expect the guy to come back. Not too soon, not too early, but just about right. And we've got Baker. Sounds like he's back in there flowing through. Rashawn Jenkins in there flowing through. So outside of there being a big-time curveball at this point, nobody that we would think is going to make that's going to be playing here or was going to be on that lineup playing or not playing, isn't going to be playing. With that said, yeah, you're right. Uchenna Nwosu is definitely going to be, it seems to be the only real true blue guy maybe out in this game. Outside of Abraham Lucas, of course, too, being the other guy, but that would seem to be it. Which all things considered, that's pretty encouraging. Thank you, Randall. I appreciate all the $5. Appreciate all the donations, not just that $5, but all of your support today. And as always, man, much love. Max says, man, I'd love to do fantasy football with y'all, but George Washington said no. I chopped down the cherry tree and I will not allow betting. Lou, I think DK is going to grub at Geno's this season. I do as well, Lou. I think he's going to have his best year as a pro, and Geno has his best year as a pro. This offense is a great fit for them. It's going to maximize them to the utmost, and I don't think that in all prior offenses that's something that we could say was going on. In fact, I think we could say that that's not what was going on prior. So I love it. I believe it. Let's see it. Snail, Jaden Daniels wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. Well, I will say this, Snail. I will say this. If he can keep himself from the crash test dummy hits and can learn to protect himself a little bit better throughout the course of the season, and he can play every game this year, he would be my Offensive Rookie of the Year. But it's just like happened with Robert Griffin at one point or another in that year where, yeah, Griffin ended up tearing an ACL, but the ACL tear actually ended up happening as well after that Haloti Nada hit he took because he's out there scrambling around and Haloti Nada just the leg whip went right over the top of, I think, Haloti, I believe, or something. It was kind of a tough one. But he's got to avoid that hit. He's got to avoid that crash test dummy thing where he's not getting down in time and just gets completely depleted. But if he can get through every game, Snail, I like the pick. Love it. Brian Judge. Oh, he's trying to nick. Seahawks Gaming says if we had Allen and Draymond, then no Murphy. It's true. It's probably true. It could be two Seahawks Gaming where it's Murphy, but then no Williams. That could have been the other way that went too. But could have been yours as well with that. Y'all and Brandon, 100% chance K9 is the player of the game. I don't know if it's a 100% chance. I'm not selling on Geno on this necessarily yet either on the other side, but K9 would be in that number 2 spot for me coming into this one when I look at it. I also think that there's a really good chance here you look at JSN as a guy to be considering of here. When I look at the cornerback room for the Broncos, it does stand out that Surtain's going to be traveling with DK and McMillan is a pretty solid slot in there. Do you try to kind of force a mismatch there with Riley Moss in on Jackson Smith and Jigba on the outside at times? Because Moss would seem to be a guy that you could go out there and target. And I did, by the way, try to go back because there was a game with Jackson Smith and Jigba in Iowa going up against Ohio State. So I did, for this stream, try to go back and see if I could find some snaps of JSN allotted against Riley Moss in that game. He wasn't. Jackson Smith went out in that game actually about halfway through. So I couldn't find any snaps of that, unfortunately. But one of those guys, y'all, and to me would probably be in that area of things here. Ethan says if Jaden Daniels can't learn to baseball slide every time, he's got to get protective really quick. He's not a big cat. And Robert Griffin did the same thing where you're running around like out there like you think you're at 225, 230, and you're not. And when your body is smaller and lighter like that and you take those hits, you get crushed. And you can't afford to allow it to happen. And you don't have to do Google search too hard to go watch Jaden Daniels running around like a crash test dummy at college. And he got away with it at college. And you could argue a little bit by the luck of the draw a little bit, because a couple of those hits could have definitely put him down. I don't think he's going to get away with that, though, at the pro level. And I'm not sure, sometimes with these guys that play wild, loose, and free and crazy in college like that, that transition to playing safe tends to be a slow process. We saw this with Lamar Jackson where, Lamar still to this day just slowly kind of onboarding the play things safe a little bit. You don't lay your body out on the line. Brian Justice's hot take, JSN is the number 1 receiver in both yak and touchdowns. Ooh, I like it, man. Let's go. Definitely be throwing a lot more down by the goal line than you have in recent years. He'll give him more opportunities. Nicholas, I wanted Jaden for the Hawks, but knew it wasn't doable. So happy we got Byron Murphy. Yeah, those quarterback run was a crazy one this year. You saw it, and just didn't have that opportunity to go grab that guy, but I think they did pretty fine with what they got. I think we got a pretty good consolation on that one, Nicholas. Ethan, Hawks Nest, what specifically do you think McDonald will do to confuse Nix and overwhelm him in his first game? I think stack boxes are a big part of this. And stack boxes really with going to the 4-man fronts, not stack boxes to the blitzes, but stack boxes, pulling out into coverage, taking away short routes. I think that there'll be a bit of a mix. Like a guy like Brock Purdy, you're probably spending a lot of the day taking away short routes. With a guy like Nix, who has a little bit of a better arm over the top, there's going to be some protectivism over the top at times. But I think you're going to try to give him lots of looks of pressure and force him into, where he's come into this game, and Sean Payton is not going to be able to get, in my opinion, really exhaustive with him on the variety of checks and adjustments he can make. Payton will be like, here's the call. And then if you see this, do that. And if you see that, do this. And that's going to be that. Much in the same way I'm saying, like if you have Nix back there and he drops points in times here where there's going to be rollouts to the right and there'll be 2 read options for Nix, and then it's either throw it away or run. There'll be options where he has RPO options where it's like you fake it into the belly of the back, you come back to the slant route. If the slant route isn't there, then you run. And everything's going to be kept in a real simple place, or that's where Payton's going to try to keep it for Nix in this first start. What McDonald wants to do is drive it to a complicated place. You're going to put the ball in the belly. You're going to come out, you're going to try to throw that slant, but we're going to have a guy driving on the slant. And then we're going to have a secondary guy here watching you from a spiral, and he's going to take away your legs if you try to run. Get to your second read, get to your third read, force you to do the things that Payton doesn't want to force you into having you to do, essentially. So, in my opinion, this comes off both the stack boxes. Obviously, the changing the coverages on the back end also work hand in hand with this. So, stack boxes, we show you cover 2, it becomes cover 1. Stack boxes, we show you cover 1, it becomes cover 3. Stack boxes, we show you a 2 high shell, it becomes a cover 2 post snap. You're going to do that in addition to the stack boxes you're doing. And this is a big part of what you're doing defensively anyway. But I think that you are going to really drive it at the head in this game. That there'll be some games, I think, where you're going to be maybe more with just 4-man fronts or 5-man fronts, or just play it true with the, just a 4-man, let it lie in that way. But on this one, I think you're going to run a lot of action there up front. There probably is also going to be a lot of times in this game where we're going to lean to a little bit more of the zone than the man. I think there'll be times out there this season where we're going to ask our guys to just run pure man-based concepts against certain teams. In this one, I think it's a little bit more of the man stuff because you just want to force him into having to think it. You don't want to give Nick's points in this game where you get to have him drop back and look and he's like, oh, I got a one-on-one matchup. I'll just try to see if my guy can win the one-on-one matchup. You want him thinking. You want it complicated. You want him having to process post-snap. Zone can do that a lot of times, especially if you're fluctuating the zone of what it's looking like pre to post-snap. Sales says RG3 got away with it for 1 year. Dan Quinn is good enough. Dan Quinn is good enough a coach, not Anthony Richardson, him. Oh, hopefully not, Snail. Hopefully not. It does get hard because there's a bit of a draw here from coaches to sort of, it's working. And look at what Washington did that year where Shanahan's threw out all of their playbook just about in order to bring on the Baylor offense. And remember with this Naylor, he didn't really get through the year. So like even in RG's 3 case, he got away with it through 65% of the year. And then he got injured on the Haloti Nada play. And then he tore the ACL a little bit later on. And then he tried to go out and play in the Seattle game basically on a partially torn ACL and ripped it even further. So that's why I think I'm worried about it with him, and why I say with him, I think it's, you throw the rookie out there, Snail. You should have him sitting on the bench learning. You should have him on the bench processing and understanding. If you throw him out there and you toss him into the deep end, they're going to kick in every direction to stay above the water. And in kicking in every direction to stay above the water, you ultimately can set him up into a place of becoming susceptible to these very kind of injuries. And be it whether it was RG3 in that first year or Anthony Richardson in his first year or a variety of other quarterbacks that we can look at that were kind of in this similar way. The guys end up getting themselves, I mean, even Levis last year playing a little bit too loose and free, I think got himself beat up. And you got to protect yourself at the NFL level. These guys are too big. They're too bad. They hit too hard to think that you can do the college thing of I'm just going to tough guy this one. Lou says, did Pumpkin do a prediction show this season? She's the star of the show after all. We did it a little bit earlier, Lou. Good time right now. Let's run them back to back because they're short little things and I think they're fun. So let's rerun the first one here for you. This is Lil Hawkeye Predicts. This would be my nephew, Lil Hawkeye. Let's see what he's got to say on the prediction for this upcoming Bronco matchup.
Bonix at Lumen? Are you kidding me? Seahawks are going to f***ing own Bonix. Seahawks 27-13. Believe it. Go Hawks.
We got my nephew with his prediction. We'll come back here with Pumpkin, where Pumpkin predicts. We have lined 2 salmon dishes. Middle of the hallway. Bronco card to the left. Seahawks card to the right. Pumpkin comes around the side, looking first at the vent. Checks both bowls. She's heading to the Bronco bowl. Don't go there, kitty. No. She's redirecting. Overhead cam captures the moment. She sniffs the card, verifies it's a Seahawks card, and then we've got full confirmation. The Seahawks are going to kick the crap out of the Broncos this Sunday. Pumpkin has spoken. There is your prediction there, Lou. Write it down. That's what they say about that. Jesse Messick, what happened to Jarek Reed? Jarek had the torn ACL last year, still coming back after it and trying to get himself right. We've seen with this injury that oftentimes it's one that is not necessarily that you just bounce right back from the next year. Yes, you're technically recovered. Yes, technically the timeline would say you should be back on the field. But we've seen this happen so many times before, Jesse, where the guys take the extra bit of time. There tends to be a year and a half. Sometimes it can even take the 2-year period to get fully back and right from this injury. And with Jarek Reed, he started out on the IR. I don't know if he's going to be there all year, but we have not seen any note of him coming off of that IR anytime soon. So I would, until you hear differently, expect that he's going to remain there. And then that's where I think it's going to stand probably pretty certainly for the future on this one. Brian Jones, great predictions, though. Very good predictions. I like it. I like it. Brian Judge, 27-13 is conservative. I have the Hawks 33-9. Let's go. I love the confidence. I'm trying to stay in the pocket of realism. I got a 10-point win, 24-13, something like that, 10, 11-point win. That feels about right. That feels about right to me. All right. Well, we'll start to put a little bit of wrap up in here. We got through all the questions on this side of it. If you could for me, folks, today, please hit that like button. It does help out this channel tremendously in the growth and allowing us to just keep getting bigger. As we're on the road here to 20,000 subscribers, just past 16,600. Thank you to all the new subs that helped us get over that mark, but we want to just keep on going. We want to keep on moving. So help us get here today. Help us get over that 20,000 mark. Sub up today. Hit that like button. It puts me out on the algorithm for others to then get subbed up on. So it has a big effect even when you do it on that. Thank you again, Underdog Fantasy, one more time. Sponsor the show. Use my code, NEST. We're on the precipice of the start of the season. Go out there, get some of those, get on some of this action right now. It's some sweet action to get on. And again, if you want to get on my Underdog Fantasy, I have put the link in the chat here. I'll put it again here just one more time on the way out. If you want to join, we're going to be doing the fantasy draft here. It'll kick off as soon as we get the last person in. It's in the chat right now. So if you want to join, feel free to join on that. $10 is the joining fee for it. Go out there and win a little bit of money. Go head to head with me, see if you can win it. We've got 3 guys in there. We're going to kick that off here, if not tonight, by early tomorrow. So thank you to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring the show here at the Hawks Nest as they have last year, and we'll be doing through all this upcoming season. Thank you guys for a great show today. I really appreciate you watching. We'll be back tomorrow with the B&B show at 8 o'clock just after Thursday Night Football to really fully break down this upcoming matchup between the Seahawks and the Broncos. As me and Brendan will be getting into some of the finer-tuned details of it. I thank you guys for a great chat as always. You guys are amazing in both the support and great comments and great thoughts where you guys are coming from with this team and what you guys are thinking on. I love it. Radu is going to finish us off right with this $5 donation. Radu, thank you for that $5 dono, brother. It's good to see you in the house tonight as well, man. Very, very kind of you. One of my big donators and supporters on this channel. What is the loudest place to stay in Lumen if you know? I will be in the 100 section for the first time for this upcoming game. I want to say it's the closed end because it's closed and the noise has a way of having a better chance to reverberate. But it does seem like that other end, even with the open end of it, for whatever reason, feels at times like it's a shade louder. It's one end or the other. I got to admit, I haven't been down on that open end at like the 100 level raw dude to be able to kind of assess where the noise is at that side. But if I was to really guess, I'd say probably the closed end is the toughest because it is closed, and the more closed you have, the more the noise stays on the inside. So like the side Radu that they raise the flag on going down would probably technically be the loudest, but it's a good question. I will say this, Radu, if you haven't been at the 100 section before in the stadium, there's a remarkable difference. You know, the whole sales slogan here is that there's no difference between being in the 300 level to the 100 level. Oh, BS. Yes, there is. It's a much more intimate way of experiencing the game at the 100 section. You do just feel so much more closer to the action and right on top of it. So it'll be interesting to see how your experience is with it. But congratulations on getting to go to the game, man. And I'm going to go with the closed end is the final answer I'll go with on that one. I feel closed end is the right one with this. But Chris also brings up the Hawks Nest is the loudest, of course. I mean, it does kind of sometimes feel like maybe that's the end that does give the teams the most fits when they're down there and they're trying to figure stuff out. Brian Judge says field is the loudest for sure. The field's closed end. Okay. They're both really loud. Rand the Cut says, when I sat in the Hawks Nest, it was super loud. They stomp on those metal stands. They do. Those folks are very boisterous there, too. That's part of why I think it seems louder down that end, is that the folks that seem to man up in the Hawks Nest, no coincidence, tend to be real loud down there. You're not going to find a lot of those guys sitting on their hands, not letting it rip. Radu says, yes, sir, I've been to the 200 or 300, decided to try 100 for the first time this season. It's really fun, Radu. I was down there at the 100 a couple of years ago for the Cardinals game, and there's just some there's some vantage points you get and what you can see on things that is really special and really shows off the best angles that stadium has to provide for fans. That part of what I think makes that stadium unique and such a cool one at that. So, man, hell of an experience that's going to be, Radu. Get down there early, get your pre-funkin' in, really soak up that experience. It's the best way to do it, I think. Brian says the Hawks Nest stomp is crazy. It is, man. They get after it. They let it rip. They let it rip. Well, we will be back here in just under 24 hours, 8 o'clock, or actually 24 hours on the dot. I will be right back here with Brendan, and we'll be doing the B&B show with a little bit of prep work here for this Broncos Seahawks upcoming matchup. I thank you guys for watching the show today. Thank you for hitting the like button. Thank you for all of the tremendous support to this channel, which is what allows me to help this go. Any kind of support is always welcome here, and it is what allows me to do this full time is your guys' donation. It's not the ad revenue. It's not the sponsorships. Those things help, but it is indeed your guys' support on these donos in the channel that allows me to do this full time like I'm able to do. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. I'm going to be able to really let this thing rip here this season, and I'm really looking forward to it. If you don't know as well, we've got a Hawks Nest Clips channel that has been running here for a couple of months now. Almost got a couple thousand subscribers on that channel. I'm busting up and clipping up a lot of the clips from these live stream shows to the Hawks Nest channel, Hawks Nest Clips channel. So just shorter content. A lot of people request that type of stuff. So if you're looking for a little bit of the shorter form stuff, go over there. We're going to be having a lot of videos released throughout the year on that side of it. Count on it from my end of it. Radu, thank you for the $2 donation again, man. He says just money. Radu in showing the love with the $2 dono and the double donation at that. And Radu, man, you've been a long-time supporter of this channel. I really, really do appreciate it. It doesn't have to be $10. Doesn't have to be some big donation here. You can do a 50 cents to a PayPal. You can do a 50 cents to a Venmo. You can do a $2 through the Super Chat. All of it, it helps. All of it collectively allows for me to, again, be able to do this. So thank you, Radu, man. I really, 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 really do appreciate you for that. You're very kind in all of your support to this channel, man. It is never lost on me or never not appreciated because I do understand normally at this size, folks like me at 16,000 size, you got to wait to be about double my size so you can get the full-time status of it. So thank you, man. I appreciate you for that, man. And we'll probably see you over on Twitch. I will be maybe going back on Twitch a little bit later this evening if you guys want to catch me over there doing a little bit of gaming maybe. But until we're back tomorrow. Till we're back to a little bit of previewing more of this Broncos matchup, a little bit more in depth. I hope I don't have to remind you guys about the potentially great upcoming season that you're about to witness. I hope I don't have to remind you guys that we have turned the corner, that the tunnel of light, we are progressing down it, and it is coming closer and closer and closer and becoming more and more lit up. Does it happen this season? I don't know. It just might. So get hyped for this team, and by God, don't you ever forget. Go Hawks!